A squad of heroes had to deal with a dragon. The guy with red hair shouted for the dragon named Genrerok to surrender. Today his revenge on the Howard Empire would end. The dragon was displeased that these miserable bugs would not settle down. Destroying half the empire for the death of his cub is too small a price to pay. Genrerock was ready to tear them apart, and after that, he will destroy the rest of the empire. This story was like being transported into a poorly drawn picture. The piece itself was titled Evan's Life. There were only 88 views on Chapter 7. It was read by a man with a tired look in his eyes. At this point, he was in the hospital. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Henry's disease. It is a disease in which the motor nerve cells are affected, which leads to paralysis, and finally to the death of the muscles of the whole body. This was his fatal diagnosis at the age of 25. He had no family, no children, and not even the money he was saving for a bright future. And now there isn't even a young body in its prime. Everything was destroyed by the disease alone. It had been 4 years since he had been diagnosed with Lou Henry's disease. The boy was 29, and his body was gaunt. He almost lost his mind, and the whole time he was surprisingly saved by some stupid comic book. But that was the end of it. His eyes began to close, and a doctor was running toward him. It had finally happened. However, the man regretted that he had never had time to read the entire comic book to the end. Of course, it was clear at that point. He was well aware that he was dead, but in the end, something unexpected happened. In front of him was some man with black hair, and it was like he was happy about something. Only then could he see his reflection in the mirror. He didn't even know how it happened, but for some reason he was human in his previous life, but became a dragon in this one. At first he thought he was in a blackout and denied reality. He thought a lot about what might have happened, and tried to make sense of what had happened. But now he had accepted reality, since he had indeed been reborn as a dragon. Countless short stories, comic books. Dragons have never appeared as weak creatures. It's a sin to complain to someone who has been reborn into the strongest creature in the universe. But there was something else good. Life expectancy is different for every race, and a dragon can even live for 10,000 years. In his past life, he had to work from a young age, and then the guy got sick in the prime of his life. It will be different in this life. To be reborn as a dragon and practically become immortal is the ultimate gift. But as soon as he tried to say something, an unintelligible sound came out of his mouth, and he didn't understand why these sounds kept coming out of him. However, such a small drawback could be endured. He did become a dragon, didn't he? Someone lifted him up in his arms and also called his name Royce. It was the same man who had inquired as to what this dragonkin was so excited about. Now it's time to eat. They put a bib on him and sat him at the table. But the food in front of Royce didn't inspire confidence. The man wondered if the dragon had no appetite. Let him eat it while it's fresh, or it won't taste good later. Still, it's hard to get used to the sight of such a culinary masterpiece. But you don't go to another man's monastery with your own rules. Since he's a dragon, he'll have to eat what dragons eat. As soon as he tasted it, Royce could taste the strawberry flavor. It was quite tasty after all. And while the little guy was passionately eating his food, he noticed something else. Namely the concerned face of a man. He was advising the dragon to eat more. Royce didn't like being glared at. The man in front of him was Royce's father, and it was worth it to the dragonborn. But to ask that his father let him eat in peace, it hit him alive. The man was uncomfortable with being referred to specifically as a father. He asked to be called daddy. He even said the word in syllables. He could only stare silently at what the man was doing. And this man here, by the looks of it, is also a dragon. Royce realized he didn't even know his name. He called him father again and inquired about his name. Only now he was curious. And then it happened a month later. His daddy's name is Genrerock. The name was quite familiar to him. Could it be that his father was the same Genrerock who wanted to destroy everyone? Royce jumped to the floor. The Genrerock didn't understand at all what was happening to his baby boy. Royce ran off with words about being full. He couldn't believe what was happening. After which, the dragonkin entered the huge office. He pulled out a book and started leafing through it. And now his hunch was confirmed. Even the book talked about the Howard Empire. That's the name of the empire from that mediocre comic book he read before he died. It turns out he wasn't just reborn as a dragon. He got inside the comic. Another conclusion can be drawn from this. Genrerock walked into him. The man inquired if the baby was in pain. It's hard to imagine such a kind and gentle father becoming someone else. He would turn into a rabid dragon who wanted to destroy everyone. It's even possible. Genrerok would stain the entire continent with the blood of men to wrest the soul of his child, who lost his life because of their arrogance. He remembered that Genrerock's newborn baby dragon had died at the hands of a human, so that's why he went crazy. It was only then that a realization came into his little head. Royce inquired if he had any older brothers or sisters. The man replied that this child was their first. Maybe they're planning more kids. He cheerfully informed me that he wasn't. He and his mother had decided to raise Royce alone, and if he is an only child, the deceased on the degenerate is himself. The comic begins with the child Genrerok being killed, so he goes insane and destroys the empire. The man noticed his baby boy falling. It was as if he had already said goodbye to his father, but he managed to catch it in time. Royce realized that he was just the trigger for the story to begin to unfold. A villainous dragon child who would disappear before the story even began. He had indeed become a dragon destined to die. The little dragon was lying in the treasury. In his past life, his time was also limited. He won't even be able to spend all that money, 'cause he's gonna die again. It's so unfair. But he didn't want to die for nothing. He reached for another book. Royce has to remember the year Genrerock turned into a crazy dragon. He had lost his child after all, and gone mad. If Royce could only remember the year it would happen, he would know the exact time he would die. Whereupon he remembered that it was the 3589th year of this era. It's the year 3090. Royce will die between 498 and 499 years of life. Just a year into adulthood, but no one's going to die now. Royce will make sure to survive for 499 years. He's going to destroy that stupid comic book, after which he was busily gorging himself on his food. So actively that even Genrerock was a little shocked. Royce asked for more refills. They have plenty of food, so he can eat in as much as he wants. There was a bug flying around. She sat right on top of Royce's food. Of course, the man noticed this too and became concerned. He set aside the spoon Royce was holding. The dragonkin was angry, not realizing what had even happened. At the same time, the man reached for the fallen bug. That was close. Dad is working on creating similar creatures, but they are not dangerous to dragons. But since Royce is still a baby, he might get hurt by these bugs. These insects are very poisonous. The important thing is not to eat them. Royce didn't know at the time that he should have passed on the great importance of this. He walked down the hallway reading a book. The knight's eyes lit up. The knight was preparing to kill the protagonist. Noticing this, the dragonkin began to scream. But at his shout, Genrerock came running in at once. He stopped the knight's weapon. After that, dark energy began to accumulate near him. And then there was an explosion. The man asked his son if he was okay. It was strange, because he was sure he had set up the knights so that they wouldn't hurt Royce. In such a short period of time, he'd almost died twice. And a few days later, his doubts were replaced by conviction. The little dragon was glad to be out for a walk. The air was really wonderful. There was a large mountain in front of him. Genrerock told me it was the left fang of the land, one of the two great mountains that rises at both ends of the continent. This place is famous for being home to many mysterious times. It was interesting for him to look at a mountain that was bigger than Everest. It was so incredible to see in person what he had only seen in a picture. Afterward, a butterfly caught his attention. Royce wanted to catch a butterfly. Suddenly the weather began to change. And that's when he was struck by lightning. What the hell is going on in this world anyway? The man ran to his son. Suddenly, the dragonkin was struck by lightning once more. Now it all makes sense. Does the comic book plot require him to die no matter what? Genrerock didn't like Royce's suffering. The dragon himself trembled as he sat in his room. He had almost lost his skates, hadn't he? 3 lightning strikes in the same place, in such a short period of time. Looks like he wasn't wrong. The comic book plot intends to kill Royce. But why so early? The day of his death was 498 years away. Moreover, he was to die at the hands of men. Is this happening because the dragonkin himself has decided not to die? Do they really mean to say that the comic story won't begin until after his death? But if Royce survives, that means his father won't turn into a rabid dragon. Now was not the time to relax, for he must do something about it. He must by any means necessary get rid of the scythe of death that hangs over his neck. He ran to the man's office and also called him even Daddy. Of course, he didn't let it go unnoticed and was very happy about it. Genrerok patted him on the head and asked what was wrong. Royce asked if they had any defense equipment at home. In fact, there is one item, but it's too early for a baby dragon to use it. In order to use artifacts, he needs the appropriate power. This can be obtained through intense training. And Royce is just a kid. Let him grow up a little, and then he can start them. In a few hundred years, it'll be just fine. However, he really wanted to start studying them now. That's a decision my father couldn't understand. Genrerock felt it was too early for him to study all of this. However, Royce tried to convince her that it wasn't too early for him. Is it forbidden to learn the power of wielding artifacts at his age? Learning is usually taken after hibernation, but Royce's eyes were begging to let him do it, so the man gave up and decided to train him. He wanted to start right away. Royce was overjoyed. But before they could do that, they had to go somewhere. The little dragon asked where to go. The dragonborn child must visit the elders to learn his true nature. Royce ran outside to his dad. The man joyfully tried to hug his son. Royce asked how they would go to the elders. That's a bit of a ridiculous question. He should know the answer to it himself. Of course they will fly there. A purple dome formed there. Royce realized that he was about to see the dragon with his own eyes. Genrerock's true form was much larger than Royce himself. The little dragonkin was encouraged to see it all in front of him. The Genrerock held out his paw and told Royce to climb in. The little dragon climbed up on his paw. Genrerok advised him to hold on tight. Of course, he wasn't used to flying so fast and at such heights. The huge dragon wanted to fly even higher. Royce inquired how high they need to go. Genrerock only laughed, saying that they were still too low. They flew even higher than the clouds. Royce even thought they were heading straight for space. The huge dragon reported that they were almost there. They were approaching a glowing building. He clearly didn't expect to see just such a thing in front of him. Genrerock assumed Royce was surprised. This is the sacred land of dragons. A town called Silver Flower. They landed outside the building. It all seems so much bigger up close. Genrerock returned to his human form. Now it was up to them to move on. It was as if they had entered some temple where the elders sat. Sandra, who was a dragon lord and one of the 13 elders, welcomed them here. The Genrerock introduced himself as Pamis's son. Royce tried to say hello too. Barotis can't believe that this is Genrerock's child, because unlike Pamis, his grandson looks smart and polite. Pamis calls him a jerk. At the same time, Genrerock greeted his father. Dragon noticed that it had been 623 years since he had come to introduce his wife, whose name was Valentina, and since they had a baby boy, they should have let him know about it. Why is he seeing him for the first time, like the rest of the elders? Genrerock explained that Royce had only come into the world a month ago. Even now they had come too soon. He clearly wasn't happy about it. After that, the large dragon turned his attention to Royce. Royce noticed this attention too. For a minute they looked at each other in silence, after which Royce called him Grandpa. This nickname struck Pamis right to his dragon heart. It was obvious that he liked it very much. Pamis exclaimed joyfully that he was indeed his grandfather and this was his grandson. Royce is so handsome. The other elders also noticed that he was very happy about his first grandchild. He had dreamed so much about him. Let him be happy. Sandra assumed that they had come to learn Royce's true nature. But isn't it a little too soon for that? Genrerock thinks so too. However, Royce asked to be trained. Pamis started bragging about how his grandson was very interested in learning from an early age. Sandra told this old dragon to shut his mouth. But since that didn't work, the Dragon Lord only had to sigh and tell Royce to go to the center. It was noticeable that the baby was a little worried, but his dad tried to calm him down. Alice just needs to sit still. After which he approached the center of the circle. Now it is up to the elders to use their powers. It was as if bright pillars of light had appeared there. Of course, he was interested in watching the whole process. Sandra told the baby to close his eyes and call on a friend who would be with him for the rest of his life. Royce closed his eyes and tried to summon his friend. Sandra noticed that the watch attribute was beginning to glow. Genrerock didn't expect a non-natural phenomenon to appear either, namely time. He knew that the non-natural is usually stronger than the natural. His son is definitely a genius. Pamis noticed his attribute light up as well. That's to be expected of his grandson as well. Now he even has the attribute of strength. And he has 2 attributes in total. They couldn't believe that someone with 2 attributes at a time had appeared in the clan. It hadn't happened in a long time. It was only then that he noticed that his attribute was lit up. Even the Dragon Lord himself didn't think that the space attribute would light up. So that's 3 attributes at once. Kaidos, the first Dragon King. The Rottweiler is the most feared dragon to be devoured by a demon. These 2 were the only 2 in history to possess the triple attribute. From this point forward, a new story will be written. Suddenly, the attribute of reason shone through. It was as if there was a golden glow around the Dragonkin. From this glow, even Genrerock tried to shield himself. Royce himself rejoiced in it all. He embraced these attributes and was overjoyed. Something caught his attention. It was only then that he noticed all the stares that were fixed on him. Royce didn't understand at all what had happened to them. Genrerok couldn't find the words to describe this whole situation either. He sat at the table and tried to think through his situation. Time, space, force, and mind. These are 4 attributes that are not natural. A talent that makes even great dragons speechless. skills that will help completely change the plot of the comic book. With such skills, he will be able to fool the story all by himself. Perhaps that's why the plot is trying to kill it. But what good is having such incredible powers if Royce could die at any moment? However, all was not yet lost. His abilities brought him to a crisis, but they also presented him with new opportunities. Honing his skills will greatly improve his chances of survival, especially since he's not the real Royce from the comic book. He still has memories from his past life, and he knows what crises lie ahead of him. So Royce is going to make the most of it and survive. He pulled out books called Sacred Power Standards and Martial Arts Standards, where the creation of magic and attributes closely tied together. It is a sacred power, as well as martial arts that allow you to work both your body and attributes at the same time. What would be the best thing to start learning for survival? Or he shouldn't ponder that and just tackle both books at once. With a little effort, he can handle it all. He was determined to start now. He was approached by Genrerock, who brought him a bowl of all sorts of goodies. He even drooled at the sight of it all. A growth attribute in the form of blue ice crystals, Ramus. Chewing attribute for the neck, the stem of the gene hits. An attribute of manners that resembles cotton candy, Celestial Medusa. Tart rennet to improve brain function, Partridge Heart. These magical foods contain large amounts of energy, which can cause a mere mortal to explode if he eats them without thinking. The dragon's body has an organ called the dragon's heart. It allows you to convert attributes into mana. The more he eats, the sooner he'll get big. At this sight, Genrerok tried not to laugh. Royce already seemed to be falling asleep on the move. This poor guy must be tired. The little dragon was put to sleep in the bed, along with a toy. A small purple ball appeared there, after which it began to transform into a fork. After which she landed right next to Royce's bed. That seemingly dark energy flew off somewhere. After that, it was morning. Royce woke up and didn't even remember when he'd fallen asleep. He remembered that he had only eaten recently. He heard his daddy calling him to eat. The little dragon was ready to jump off the bed. Suddenly he falls. He then landed right in front of the fork that was in the floor. So he almost got killed by a fork stuck in the floor. The dude with the scythe is out of his mind, giving him that kind of challenge. He didn't even know where he could have drunk all his luck. Afterward, Royce noticed that he had a string tied to his tail. It was only then that he noticed his rabbit. That rabbit was the only one Royce could talk to. I'll have to get my dad to fix it. Of course, Genrerock realized that his son was very upset about the rabbit being torn. But Daddy will fix him up, so Royce shouldn't worry. Suddenly he woke up. Royce didn't realize when he was here. Again he heard his father calling him to go eat. The little dragon looked at the rabbit and noticed that it had managed to get stitched up. He walked into the dining room and informed his dad that something strange was going on. The Genrerock was immediately frightened, for he thought Royce was ill. He didn't seem to be sick, but it was as if he was. He started having memory lapses. Royce falls asleep, but he just can't remember doing it. But you could tell from the look on my father's face that everything was fine. There was a look of relief on his face. Apparently the time is coming. Royce didn't understand what time it was. The man explained that his son wasn't sick, but was just preparing for hibernation. Dragons go through 2 hibernation cycles to grow. If he's been feeling very sleepy lately, it means he's approaching his first cycle. Royce inquired as to how long he would sleep. It wasn't known exactly, but about 100 years. This situation is pretty damn unfortunate. Just recently he's become convinced that he's wearing the mark of death. And now it turns out he's going to sleep for 100 years. That's a straight shot to the grave. He ran off, yelling that it wouldn't work that way. Now he should come up with a plan to stay awake as long as possible. First of all, no food. A full stomach makes you drowsy. Second, no baths. It makes him relax and want to sleep. And third, try not to move so you don't waste energy. Fourthly, do not go near the bed, for it gives rise to a strong desire to lie on it. It will go to find a way to not sleep at all. But now he realized that his plan was not a good one. It was too tiring. His father came running to him saying Royce needed food. The Genrerock asked to eat at least a spoonful. But Royce didn't want to. The little dragon ran away. He sighed, realizing he had almost swallowed his food. He can't relax until he finds a way to stay awake. His plan was to stand, pinch his butt, eat only spicy food, wash his face with ice water, and not read books. Even so, his eyes began to close. He slapped his cheeks, realizing he was about to fall asleep. There was no way he could sleep, but no matter how hard he tried, he still fell asleep. Royce slapped himself again. The letters in front of him became blurry. He kept trying to force himself to stay awake. He then heard his name being called and woke up. His tired father sat in front of him and inquired how he had slept. Royce mentioned that he hadn't slept, just a simple snuggle for a moment. The GM congratulated his son. However, the protagonist did not understand what he was being congratulated on. The man wished him a happy 100th birthday. Let's go back 100 years. Then a man brought him a snack, and then he saw that Royce had fallen asleep. He thought it was adorable how his son went into hibernation reading a book. He decided to put him on the bed. It would be good if he ate some magical foods before going to bed. Well, the baby's already asleep, so there's nothing to be done. It might be better to wake him up, though. In the end, he decided to leave the child to sleep. Soon they would meet again. He was sitting in his office doing work. Afterward, Genrerock heard some noise. He immediately ran into his son's room, not realizing what those sounds were. Then he saw Royce being crushed by the furniture. The man inquired if he was all right, and also moved the furniture away. But the dragon was sleeping peacefully. He didn't see any signs of forced entry. You get the idea that legs made of solid wood just broke like that. But even in the last dozen years, a lot of inexplicable things have happened to Royce. It was like someone was trying to kill him, making his death look like an accident. Genrerock has no idea why this sort of thing is happening around Royce. However, he needs to create all sorts of protective barriers around him. His life expectancy will be shortened, but that doesn't matter at all. As long as Royce stays safe, nothing will matter. For 60 years now, he hadn't slept a wink, guarding Royce's sleep. That's 4,120 times Royce has been in danger. I wonder if someone's really trying to kill him. But who could do such a thing? Moreover, only a few races know of the existence of dragons. Who would dare to ignore the existence of Genrerock and try to harm his child? Such a thing is only possible for other dragons, but newborns are held in high esteem. Could all these events be a coincidence? He didn't understand it at all. It was calm at first, and then there was an explosion. The initiator of this explosion was Genrerock. He was furious that they dared to attack. The knights decided to attack him. However, it wasn't difficult for Genrerock to deal with them quickly. Did he exert his power on them? After that, the knights found themselves in darkness, and then they were pierced by dark spikes. He only stared silently at all the destroyed knights. After that, the man decided to turn to his father for help. He told me that it was inevitable, because geniuses often have to face the difficulties of fate. This is not the only ordeal he will have to go through. Just like the first Dragon King. Could it really be true? Royce's talent is so powerful that fate itself wants to take him away as a boy. But that's not going to happen. May it be God or fate or something else. He's doing his best to protect his child. Present tense. Royce looked at his reflection in the mirror. Looks like he's grown up a bit. How did he even manage to grow just that much in 100 years? But he really did feel like he'd just dozed off during class. Has it really been 100 years? Plus, he even managed to survive. Wasn't anything at all trying to kill him like it used to. I mean, as long as Royce was asleep, he was safe. He doesn't realize anything. All that matters is that he was able to survive. He was visited by Genrerock, who asked the lad to come down to eat. But the protagonist also didn't understand why his father looked so exhausted. Could it be that he was ill? The little dragon had given him a lot of trouble back then. So from now on he will be a model and obedient child. He asked his dad to wait for him. Genrerock was glad to see his son so full. And Royce was very hungry. Royce wondered why he looked so tired. The man didn't even realize he looked bad. The little dragon advised him to get some sleep, and the man agreed. One sunny afternoon, a boy with white hair was practicing near a tree. He practiced striking with a wooden sword. Even the power of his swing wasn't bad, and it was noticeable that he was a little tired. This boy was named Mr., and he was Royce, only in human form. A servant brought the gentleman a towel. Finally, he can wipe his sweat off, for which the guy took the towel from her. She noticed that the Lord was already accustomed to human form. That was to be expected of a descendant of a great dragon clan. Royce was thinking about something. The girl wondered what it was. It's been 100 years. He asked Finn to stop calling him Mr. He is, after all, her master. It is a great honor for a star-sun fairy to serve a great lord. He even remembered her saying the same thing the first time. After the end of the first hibernation, some time passed. It was like he heard something. But there was no one in the room. The sound started coming from the box. A fairy in a maid costume burst out of there, talking about how crowded it was. Royce was frightened. He slapped her tail. After which, the fairy flew straight back to the wall. Royce turned his attention to the way she had fallen. Of course, the dragonkin didn't know what this enormous fly was in the first place. He even decided to pick it up with a pen. Once he picked up the creature, he still didn't realize what it was. The fairy's eyes lit up as soon as she saw the dragon in front of her. A starlight fairy named Finn greeted the great dragon cub. She was honored to serve and give him joy. But the little dragon simply remained silent. She asked the master to let her go. He agreed. Royce inquired as to what she meant by giving joy. He must freeze in anticipation. For the holy and powerful baby dragon, the Starlight Fairy clan is proud to present the Starlight Fairy dress-up playset with 23 different products. Since fairies are genderless, he can dress them up in both male and female outfits. Of course, they have special demon outfits as well as celestial outfits. This is a special limited edition set. And the best part of the set is her. Finn belongs to a clan of Starlight Fairies and has a flawless figure, on which any outfit can look stunning. Royce realized that this was some kind of pervert's kit. Is he being asked to treat a fairy like a toy? This was to be expected from a descendant of a great and powerful dragon clan. He got it right the first time. He flipped both the fairy and her welcome kit. I don't know what the hell this is all about. Royce asked his father what these gifts were. Genrerok told him that in newborns, this toy ranks first in requests. Well, it doesn't concern him that in the fantasy world it's normal to play with living fairies or war. However, the whole thing was creepy to him, so he tried to send her back. But she asked to stay here. Finn can do anything. She can even clean or do laundry. She really begged not to be kicked out. Turns out, being a dragon's friend is a huge honor and a guaranteed career boost for a fairy. The first fairy king who united all the clans was the child's plaything of the first dragon king. Finn wouldn't stop whining, so he left her as a subordinate. Finn wondered at the Lord's thoughts. In her 800 years, Finn knows much more than he does. What's more, she's been quite useful. He had just stretched his body, so he was ready to start studying. But most importantly, this fairy has the attribute of space, so it knows how to store things in subspaces. One is a kind of mobile dresser. She pulled a book out of subspace. Today, he would be learning the advanced course of the division and manifestation of mana. He thanked her for that. Subspace is a handy thing after all. He needs to learn it soon. While Finn poured him tea, the protagonist was busy reading a book in nature. The weather was beginning to change. It was quiet for a few more days, and then it started up again. Lightning began to appear in the sky. The fairy began to worry about the Lord, but he was able to calmly absorb that lightning with his item. He's been struck by lightning about 100 times in his life. She noticed it was an attribute of the mind. Taking advantage of the fact that more powerful pure forces flowed to meet weaker ones, he was going to absorb the lightning with a relatively weak attribute stone, and also turn it into a mid-level attribute stone. Since Royce had pumped the mind attribute enough, it was time for the next one. Another lightning bolt was about to strike him. Finn began to worry even more about the Lord. He managed to create a barrier, but the maid was shocked that he was able to create a spatial field, a distortion of reality. He was able to create such an advanced spatial field, a distortion of reality. His speed is almost equal to level 1. Even for such a blessed dragon, this is huge progress. Being the subordinate of such a great being, she would become the most important fairy in history. Meanwhile, Royce didn't realize what was wrong with her face. Beginning to study spatialization was a good idea. Now he would be able to block some assassination attempts with the spatial distortion field. The space attribute is about to reach the first level. Forces and time at the 3rd level, and the mind is still at level 5. He focused on the attribute of space to survive, so it affected the other attributes. It took Royce longer than he first thought. However, he already sees a ray of hope, so there's no way he's giving up. Now it's worth continuing. Asked Finn to get the next book. During dinner, he learned that his daddy had to go somewhere. Genrerock needs to go to the Silver Flower. This month the elder Kurdak will complete his activities. He remembered his grandfather. The man replied that he was an elder, so it was a bit unseemly to call him grandfather. But Royce believed that all of his grandfather's friends were also grandfathers. But the boy wondered how Togo's grandfather's passing had anything to do with his father's visit to the Silver Flower. As it turned out, he was invited to take the place of the elder in place of the Kurdak. I mean, he was happy that his daddy got a promotion. His daddy's really good. Turns out, Royce isn't the only one who grows and improves over the years. His father was at the highest level for a long time, and finally reached level 0 with the attribute of darkness. That's why it's the rarest attribute. It was incredibly difficult for dragons to reach level 0, and his father had managed to do so at the age of 4,000 years. He could claim to be the finance boss with such success. In the story, Genrerok was a rabid dragon that destroyed an entire continent. He possessed 2 level 0 attributes, darkness and demonism. It was said that Genrerok, whose body was completely covered in dark spots, was the true second coming of the devil. But that's not gonna happen. Royce has spent the last 150 years trying to prevent such an outcome. The man wanted to tell him something else, but he couldn't say it clearly. The boy only sighed and wondered what his dad was talking about. It seems to Genrerok that he won't be able to go home for a while. Normally, a parent who raises a child cannot claim to be an elder. Also, no female individual could handle his role better than himself. But it used to take longer to hand over the post. However, he has managed to reduce this period to 10 years. At first it seemed that he was distressed. Genrerok wanted to comfort him. But then Royce's face changed, talking about how time would fly by. He thought it would take much longer, but it was only a decade. Anyway, he just started learning martial arts, so he'll be fine. Then he noticed his father's depressed state. The boy wondered if his father was upset that he wasn't weeping over his departure. But Genrerok didn't understand what his son was saying, or tried to pretend he didn't. He also asked if he wanted anything else to eat. Let her wait a bit while he brings the appetizers. And here was this child trying to appease his father by talking about how he was no longer a child. And now it was time to leave. Genrerock told him that food was in the fridge, and advised him not to skip meals for the sake of training. The emergency medicine potion is in the third drawer of Royce's room. The guy started to get angry, talking about how he understood everything, so Dad could fly away. After all, he had been telling him the same thing for an hour. He wasn't a child after all, and would be able to take care of himself in 10 years. But of course, he was a child in the eyes of Genrerock. If you looked at his age, he was definitely still a child. The huge dragon handed him a natural object called a communication stone. They are inherently paired items. Therefore, Royce will be able to talk to the one who has the second stone, even if he is far away from him. That pebble looks expensive, so we can even get in touch with Dad. But if you think about it seriously, the signal won't get there. His dad seems smart, but sometimes his brain fails him. As they say, if there's no news, that's good news too. He can take it easy and go to the Silver Flower. Now he really should go, and if Royce needed anything, he could look for it in Genrerock's storeroom. He may also use his father's study and let him remember to eat well. Let him try not to go too far from home. His daddy's such an idiot. His father has protected him from countless dangers for hundreds of years, so he can't let his efforts go to waste. Either way, he would now be alone for a while. And now this whole house belongs to him alone. But really, those were just his only thoughts. The fairy asked for help. Behind her were two people who had found this little fairy. Finn asked not to go near her, but they grabbed the fairy. The maid asked Mr. Royce for help. The protagonist took his subordinate out of their hands. The boy was disgruntled and wondered what they were doing here. The two were happy to see Royce. They were trying to explain something about what Genrerock was saying. The guy asked that they speak one at a time. Connie, the twin sister, said that Royce's dad had gone to Silver Star City and left Royce with them. Khan, the twin brother, mentioned Genrerock's words about coming back in 10 years, and also that Royce is like them. They thought he would be bored, so they came to play. These two are not bored, but he might be sad all alone. Royce asked them to just get the hell out of here. He said that bad word again. You can't say that. These two nuisances are twin dragons, a phenomenon that happens once every 10,000 years, and they live on a neighboring peak. Connie and Khan called it bad. His father introduced Royce to them when he was worried about not growing up. They, with their silver hair and chubby cheeks, seemed cute until he played with them once. The boys visited him often and never stopped bothering Royce. He thought he'd finally get some time alone to study. Why his father did that to him? I mean, they came because they thought he was bored. And Royce is really bad. Kang even brought toys to play with him. Royce was interested in this so-called toy. He immediately took the sword from him. He wondered what it was, with the serious expression on his face. And Royce asked these twins where they found this. They didn't understand what was wrong at all. The tip of the sword, which had an orb in it, really stood out. Khan told them that they found it in their father's pantry. Connie mentioned that she had also brought this toy from the pantry. Royce wondered if they had even asked permission to draw their swords. The boys didn't say a word. These brats had quietly stolen a weapon, a magical sword that has a space attribute stone inside it. His attribute damage is much higher than Royce's. He also noticed a magical pattern there. It looks like it has some kind of function. Royce asked Finn what she thought about it. The maid remarked that the pattern was broken, so it had lost its functionality. She doesn't know for sure since it's a very high-level magic, but usually these swords have a subspace storage spell for travelers. Considering the complexity of the pattern, we can assume that subspace is likely to be huge. In that case, he's going to check out what's in there. This sword is from the dragon's treasure trove. There must be a huge number of things in his subspace, and they would all belong to Royce alone. A few hours later, Kanye and Kang were bored. When is this going to end already? Suddenly they heard the player yell to Royce that he was finally done. He was able to fix that pattern. To begin with, you need to infuse the attribute damage, and it absorbs too much. What's so incredible, the sword is trying to give away, but it wasn't subspace at all. In front of them, it was as if a portal had begun to form, and now Royce realized it wasn't subspace. This thing was getting bigger and bigger. After that, a bright flash appeared in front of the children. After that, they disappeared. The guys showed up in some unfamiliar place. Royce noticed that they didn't even appear on the ground. They were in the air, after which they began to fall. Finn wondered if they were okay. Kang felt like he'd kicked his butt, and Royce was just in pain. The main character wondered where they had gotten to. It was a cave. Afterward, he noticed that the pattern began to sparkle. But after that, unfortunately, the stone was destroyed. Khan began to cry, for Royce had broken his sword. The protagonist explained that he didn't break the sword, only the attribute stone was damaged. Only he started crying even more about Royce breaking his attribute stone. Royce asked Kani if she knew who used the sword. She had heard of this sword being used by her great-grandmother. Could it be that she possessed the attribute of space? But she doesn't know that. It's really hard. They need to learn about its purpose to understand how to proceed. Finn reported finding something. There was another such sword in the middle of the cave. Only then did Royce realize that it wasn't a subspace treasure trove. It was the magic of spatial teleportation that connects two places. His mind was clouded by thoughts of treasure. Royce should have stayed calm and been careful. Connie asked the guy where he was going. Royce wanted to figure out where they were now, so he could get home. The twins asked to wait for them too. A few minutes later, as the boys were walking through the cave, they came upon a dead end. In that case, they just have to push their way through. He then shattered a block of ice that was blocking the bee. The twins wondered what it was, but it was cold here. And Royce noticed that it was snow. Kang asked the protagonist where he was going. Seeing how surprised Royce was, the boys wondered what he saw there. Even the maid asked the gentleman what was going on here. They were near the right fang of the earth. In front of them is indeed the right fang, located at the easternmost tip of the winter continent. Now they're definitely finished. This world called Evan consists of 4 continents lined up in a row, and each of them has the same climate all year round. Spring continents with mild weather, a summer continent with a tropical climate and scorching sun, a fall continent with a cool climate and plenty of sunshine that yields a bountiful harvest, and finally the winter continent, with a harsh climate and constant snow and buckets. The lair of the dragon Genrerok is located on the spring continent on one of the peaks of a green mountain range. And now they are on the opposite side, that is, on the winter continent, near the right fang on the eastern edge. He started crying because of such a harsh situation. But the others didn't realize they were so with Royce. Let it all just go away. He realizes that one of the comic book cliches of reincarnating into a dragon is running away from home. But this one is too much. He'd never even thought of running away to the outside world, where there's danger at every turn, especially since his life was constantly on the line. Suddenly he thought about his father. If Genrerok finds out Royce is missing, he will turn into a mad dragon who asked for his baby back. That's when he remembered his bonding stone. But somehow he'd forgotten that the signal wouldn't reach space. He asked the maid if they would be able to cross the Sea of Evil, but she was adamantly against it. One of the most dangerous and terrible places in Evan's world are the waters of the Sea of Evil. They join the shortest path between the winter and spring continent, a place where even adult dragons don't want to go, as it's crawling with all sorts of monsters. Even if the Lord is the possessor of the 4 attributes in his current state, it would be impossible to cross the sea. He asked just in case. Royce wondered how long it would take to get to the left fang across the continent. She couldn't say exactly, but if you walked, about 10 years. With a little more speed, they should be able to get home before their father returns. He wanted the 2 pieces of trouble to listen to him carefully. The twins didn't realize what else the appetizers were. Now they are all in mortal danger. It is the right fang that is at the edge of the winter continent, and to return home they must walk for 10 years. Kani wondered why they couldn't just fly. He's stupid or something. Do they really want Royce to die in flight? Of course, they didn't know the word die. There's no way to fly anyway. They will walk like ordinary people and take 10 years to reach their home. Khan asked the teacher what would happen if they didn't make it in 10 years. They must guess what would happen if their fathers returned home and did not find their children there. But of course, they didn't know what would happen then. They'll scorch the entire continent looking for their children. But of course, this situation didn't scare them much. Connie asked what the big deal was. Khan was already getting excited about a future kebab. Only then did the swarm remember that these brats weren't human. Also, their parents will get really mad at them. They might even ban goodies and games for a full 100 years. Those words hurt the twins. How unfortunate to realize that goodies and games are more important to them than the fate of the entire continent. Anyway, they have to get home before their father's return. And from now on, Royce will be in charge, so they must obey him. But the twins wanted to call the shots too. The main character mentioned that someone smart should be the commander. Those who think they are smarter than Royce should raise their hand. But Royce is younger than the two of them. He called the twins babies, and mentioned that he was actually taller than them. Plus, they're only a month apart in age. He was the first one to say he'd be in charge, so he'd be in charge. Even the twins realized that he was being too childish. Finn watched in silence as the little dragons squabbled. It's still a long way to go. In the end, they divided their duties. Royce would be the leader and Finn would be his assistant, and the twins would be the burden. The preparations are all done so they can move out. They agreed with the commander. The weather was beginning to change, and he wondered why it was so suspiciously quiet. The guys realized that Royce was going to get struck by lightning again. Connie wanted to be struck by lightning too. If truth be told, these two possessed the attribute of reason. Perhaps a lightning strike would do them some good. He agreed, only asking that they not stick to him. But the clouds were too thick this time. Royce was telling that stupid lightning to finally strike. There was some kind of glow, but for some reason, nothing happened. Didn't the attribute stone glow during the thunderstorm? That's kind of weird. After which, he heard a sucking sound of some kind. There was an avalanche. The snow was right next to them. I can't believe this is some kind of joke. The twins were glad for the snow, especially that there was a lot of it. He was telling that fool to come to his senses. Now they need to save themselves. But the avalanche was already right behind them. They have to come up with something right away. Royce used separation, which resulted in a barrier forming around the bottom. But because of the avalanche, they started to fall. But the twins didn't seem too worried about that. They were having fun. A little while later, it all stopped. Finn and Royce burrowed out from under the snow. After him, Kanye and Khan popped out. The main character really thought he was definitely going to die this time. But the twins really enjoyed the event and wanted to go through it again. These joyous shrieks were beginning to piss Royce off. He hit them over the head. The main character didn't realize at all when these two would finally grow up. But now they have to find out how far they've rolled. There's snow all over the place because of the avalanche. Where are they even now? Connie mentioned that it was a pool of snow. Khan wanted to dive right into the snow. This was brought to his sister twin's attention. After that, she wanted to dive in too. Of course, she did so with a joyous shout. Those two are a headache for him. He was telling the boys to finish up, for they still had a long way to go. But they didn't even think about coming back. Royce was getting even more annoyed at first, telling them to get out already. Stop messing around. He told them to get out immediately. But after that, the guy didn't fall on his own. Finn was starting to worry about the master. He grabbed the fairy too. Royce asked that she try to fly. But even if she flew, she wouldn't be able to bear her master's weight. But they kept falling and falling. The protagonist realized that they had to stop somehow. After that, he started driving in the ice tunnel. The maid asked the gentleman to look over there. There was a cliff ahead, but the guy didn't have time to do anything as he drove off the cliff and started falling again. What's he gonna do now? But suddenly he felt something holding him. It was Connie and Khan in dragon form. They grabbed his legs. It was as if Royce's soul had left his body because of such a fall. The twins returned to their human form, talking about how much fun it was. Royce was beginning to think he respected those twins. Finn was beginning to think so too. But where did they show up this time? The maid's maid remarked that it didn't look like a naturally occurring cave. It looks like someone created this place. The guy confirmed her hunch. It's safe to say this is the first time he's been here. But Royce has definitely seen this place before. The fairy wondered what they would do now. They should realize that they could go in the opposite direction from the exit, so they would walk slowly. But the twins ran that way because they thought the exit was there. Royce had told them to go slowly. He didn't understand why these two continued to ignore their commander's words. He also didn't understand why the twins were standing still. Connie pointed into the void as if she was pointing at someone, not realizing what they were. The main character didn't understand what she was talking about either. Only then did he look closer to see a group of unidentifiable creatures. It was as if these creatures had begun to come to life. Royce was curious to know who they were. Finn was frightened, for there were so many of these creatures. A whole crowd with glowing red eyes glared at the little dragons. They began to approach the children. Kang noticed that they looked like humans, but Connie told the fool that people's eyes don't glow red. The protagonist noticed the ice general. Before the main plot began, the world knew a king named Valencia. He saved everyone from the great danger. Even after his death, he was never able to find peace because of them. namely the Ice Warriors, the place rumored to be where these creatures might have appeared. The tomb of the Hero King. Did they really break straight through to Fishtown? Is it an accident, or is it fate? But if this is indeed the tomb of the Hero King, then it means that this is where the item that was described in the comic book is located. But it looks like these guys have decided to attack them. Royce turned to the twins. He asked that the guys get rid of them. Brother and sister immediately moved forward to attack. Of course, they were excited about the possibility that they could fight now. Khan decided to strike first. The Ice Warrior tried to block the blow from the Kan sword, but the power of the dragon he could not withstand. The defeated Ice Warrior exploded. Connie sighed because she didn't think it was fair. She had been the first to notice the warrior, but the one who wanted to attack her from behind, she also noticed. The girl was able to deal with this warrior with ease, whereupon it exploded. It's really impressive, though. Turns out the twins are pretty strong. Now it's clear that they can do more than just fool around. With such skills, they will be able to fight on par with second-level warriors. There's nothing wrong with using twins as weapons. This, on the contrary, can speed up the process. Royce used time magic slowdown. Thanks to that, they couldn't even move normally. Khan wondered why they had suddenly slowed down. Connie guessed that Royce seemed to have put slowing magic on their weapons. In that case, they can mop up all the warriors here now. Before one warrior could do anything, he was already struck by a blow from Connie. A satisfied expression could be seen on her face. The girl even laughed. Kang was also busy destroying the warriors. After that, explosions began to appear one after another. It was satisfying for Kanu too. After that, these twins turned their attention to another warrior. Even the Ice Warrior realized that he couldn't do anything to them. The boys dealt with the last warrior. There was another explosion. Kang was upset because it was already over. Kanye was also very sorry. The boys paid attention as Royce praised them. Another plan was brewing in his mind. The main character asked the two if they wanted to have some more fun. They didn't understand what their captain was talking about, but they were interested. A little while later, the kid decided to have a tea party. Still, the flavor of this tea is great. Finn thanked the young gentleman for the compliment, but she was a little uncomfortable that the Lord had decided to have a tea party while the twins were fighting. All they were busy doing was fighting. Plus, this place was a lot of fun for them. Royce informed the Kan that arrows will fly at him from the right side, so he should be prepared for that. He followed the captain's advice and chopped the arrows with his sword. Next, Royce told Connie to be careful with his left sword. And now a stone ball is rolling on them. But it wasn't hard for the little dragons to destroy it. Connie reported that it was already over, and Khan noticed that nothing else was moving. Finn was shocked that they were able to overcome so many traps and destroy all the enemies. Dragons are dragons, despite their age. Royce was pleased, for here too they were already finished. The maid inquired of the gentleman what this place was all about. The protagonist revealed that the tomb of the Hero King is located here. She guessed at once that the gentleman was speaking of the Hero King of Valencia. Of course, her thoughts were correct. This is where the Hero King is buried. The tomb is a kind of dungeon with numerous traps and ice wars. They guard the king's peace to this day. Overcoming all this, you can get to the heart of the tomb, where all possible treasures are stored. Moreover, at the beginning of the story, the tomb was the goal of the protagonist and his team to improve their skills. It's a really good place to pump up rookies. Royce was pretty sure no one had ever defended this place before. In other words, all the treasures of this tomb will belong to him alone. They are almost there. The protagonist asked the twins if they were ready for the next battle. Connie and Kang replied that they were. In that case, they move on. A huge cave opened up in front of them. Her size even stunned Finn. Connie noticed that there was something there. Khan mentioned that it was something huge and ugly. He knows it himself, for he sees them. 10 ice generals will be the final boss. Everything happens just like it did in the comic book. In that case, once they get past that door, they'll come across a treasure trove. He wanted to issue commands to his subordinates already. Royce did not ignore their ferocity and readiness for battle. These twins are pretty good. Even enemies that are much bigger than them in size are not even scary to them. Dragons are creatures destined to rise to the pinnacle of glory from the moment they first fly. At this very moment, the two little ones bare their claws and fangs, glaring at the lower creatures. He said it was going to be even more fun. The children paid attention to his words. This place is really quite fun. Their captain is the best. In that case, they should finally finish this tomb. The twins only laughed and attacked their opponents. The ice general didn't have time to do anything before he was already struck with his sword. After that, the main character decided to join the battle. He clasped his palm together, indicating for the general to explode. After which there was an explosion. Kang had already taken on a new opponent, and everyone else was taken on by Connie. They were supported by Royce with slowdown and increased slowdown. The fairy laughed awkwardly, saying something that was truly unbelievable. The two were pleased with the work they had done. Connie thought she was going to sleep like a dead woman tonight. Now it's time to check out the rewards they've earned. The boys came to the door that led to the treasury. Connie couldn't wait to see what was behind that door. So she asked Royce to open it quickly. Kang was also impatient. Since these two were begging him so much, he must fulfill their wishes. In fact, he wanted to do it himself. After opening the doors, a new picture opened before them. There was a mountain of gold coins as well as other valuable items. Khan noticed that there were far more treasures here than in their father's storeroom. He decided to dive into this mountain of gold coins. Connie and Finn looked with interest at all the treasures before their eyes. The fairy asked the Lord and looked in on it. At the same time, Khan was already swimming in the imaginary pool. But then she noticed that the gentleman was engrossed in something. The kid walked up to one spot that revealed a frozen statue of the hero king of Valencia. Finn noticed that even though so much time had passed, it felt as if he was still alive. After that, something else caught the protagonist's attention. There were inscriptions in the ancient language of the winter continent. In the very beginning, light and darkness were born. And a little later they were called good and evil. Light and darkness mingled to form chaos. And in this chaos, the boundary between good and evil emerged. It was called the earth on which earthly beings were born. The saint and the demons never stopped arguing about who was more powerful than them. Each of them dreamed of dominating the other. But of course, in the conflict between good and evil, all creatures on earth suffered. In the end, the creatures of the earth could not stand it. They clashed swords against good and evil. And at their head stood the dragons, who led the humans and other races. After a long struggle, the victorious earth creatures dispersed across the continents of the 4 seasons. In time, everyone forgot about the followers of darkness and light, as well as the dragons that continued to watch over the world. However, there was a warning there from Valencia Dominofis. Once the dragons, who maintain the balance on Earth, return to their natural nature, tragedy will happen. Good and evil will reappear in this world. As a member of the last generation to chronicle the war of good and evil, he wanted to leave everything he had to those dear to him. And also this message. Royce wondered if there was a war between good and evil in the comic book. Why does the damn author make the problems worse every time? However, that's not the main thing right now. Right now, it's worth giving all the attention to the martial arts book of King Hero Valencia. Valencia is the only person to have achieved ground zero. It is no exaggeration to say that this book is his life's work and labor. She helped the main character of the comic book, named Kendrick, become the most powerful member of the human race. With this book, you can safely forget about all the treasures that are out there. But even so, it was still a shame to leave it here. So he decided to take some. And while the protagonist was busy collecting treasure, the ice that enveloped the hero King Valencia began to crack. At first, Royce thought he was just imagining things. But then he became convinced that the ice was really starting to crack. After which the ice was broken up. This just couldn't be happening. He really couldn't believe what was happening. The sword stood in the frozen ground. Has the hero king really come to life? A spark appeared in his eyes. Now that's a turn of events that wasn't even in the story. The hero king pointed his finger, indicating that this thing did not belong to him. Khan and Connie didn't understand what this was even about. The twins asked Royce what was going on. Royce revealed that King Hero Valencia was in front of them. They couldn't realize that the one in front of them was really the one that legends are made of. But it's true. He was a level 0 warrior when he was alive, so these dragonlings are no match for him. Really couldn't realize that any of the humans had reached level 0, so they need to reincarnate as dragons. But the boys didn't have time to do that. The King of Heroes in Valencia believed there was only one fate for greedy creatures. And that was death. With his own hands, he was ready to kill them. With his head, he knew he should run away from here now. But his body was not obeying him at all. His legs were trembling. Is it all the influence of the Hero King's power? The guy didn't pay attention to the twins. Connie froze in horror and trembled as well. Kang covered his head with his hands, unable to even look at the person in front of him. But he refused to accept that fate. What kind of nonsense is that? Royce didn't train hard to die in a godforsaken place like this. Power began to concentrate in his fist. He was determined not to die here. The Hero King's punch almost reached his small body. With a shout that Royce wanted to live, he attacked the king. The blow seems to have even hit the king. The guy even thought he'd gotten it right at first. But he didn't expect at all that the king's all-too-familiar punch would be right in front of his face. It was an attack of destructive power. The fairy was even thrown off because of it. As soon as Finn regained consciousness, she saw a huge rift. It was the aftermath of the attack. Her voice trembled. Even tears appeared in her eyes, and the reason was that she hadn't seen Mr. Royce. Now let's go back a couple seconds. At that moment, Royce realized that he was definitely dead now. Shards of ice and rocks sprinkled on the kid. But surprisingly, he was actually fine, and he was still alive. A fairy flew in to see him, who was glad that the Shounen had come back to life. The boy replied that he was fine, but Royce still didn't understand why he had survived. Afterward, he noticed that the cave was beginning to collapse. Canny noticed something and told Royce to look over there too. There was a huge hole. It was amazing to watch as the king hero managed to split the floor of the cave with a single sword strike. The protagonist had a thought as to whether or not it was definitely the man in front of him, and his attention was caught by the way the king hero held his hand. Did he really change the direction of the punches at the last moment? After which he threw the sword. All he could think about was the need to save the young dragon. Royce didn't understand why the hero king had saved them either. The hero king told them to walk and be careful, but the protagonist didn't make out what he had just said. But there was no time to think about that, because we had to get out of here. This place was about to collapse. It wasn't until Royce looked at the spot where the hero king had stood that he noticed how he had almost disappeared. Now he won't be able to ask him anything, and the main character's attention was caught by the way a rock fell behind him. Connie and Con began to cry at the thought that they were going to die. Now is not the time for that. He's transformed into dragon form. Royce shouted for them to reincarnate immediately. After the twins reincarnated into dragon form, the captain said to follow him. The fairy tried to hold on to the Lord's horn. Another rock was falling right on top of him. Royce used the cut, after which the huge rock split into smaller ones. The boys had almost reached the hole in the cave. More snow began to fall into the hole. Fortunately, they made it out in time. It's not very comforting to realize that they actually almost died there. Well, what the hell was that all about? The hero king tried to kill them, but then he suddenly changed his mind. They almost became his grave neighbors. Royce didn't understand at all what the matter was. Hadn't the hero king woken up to get rid of them, since they had invaded the tomb? Also, before he disappeared, he spoke to them. Either way, the important thing is that they were able to survive. Plus, he was able to take possession of what he wanted to take from this tomb. According to Finn, the twins have had it pretty rough. The twins were crying and also talking about something that was very scary. Now they must go down and find a place to rest. He transformed into a man and lay down in the snow. Now they can finally rest. Royce heard a whimper. It was Connie and Con. They couldn't calm down. Royce was scared himself, and it was even more traumatic for the guys. The protagonist handed them a partridge heart and told them to stop crying. It was better to let them eat it, because it would help replenish their mana. The boys thanked him, but they still cried a little. His mana was almost at 0 too. Royce realized that he'd never loaded himself so heavily since reincarnation. Now he offered to rest. The twins were almost asleep too. But they turned their attention to Royce, after which the boys lay down with him. Mentally, the fairy wished them good night. She was glad to see the whole nice picture. That's how the boys spent the night in the snowy mountains. Morning came. The twins were already awake and running around in the snow. They acted as if nothing had happened yesterday. And now they are happy about the snow again. Connie and Can started throwing snowballs at each other. These guys have seen nothing but snow since yesterday. Haven't they really had enough of it yet? Well, the fairy exhaled with relief, for the twins were in good spirits. It was hard to stay so cheerful after the experience. Actually, Finn's right. They are dragons after all. He also looked up at the mountain and realized that they'd made a decent descent. But the boys still hadn't come across a single cabin, let alone a village. The protagonist also wondered if there were no monsters on the winter continent. In all this time, they had not met any of them. But it wasn't like that at all. The winter continent possesses a much larger island than any other. Moreover, due to the harsh climate, there is a shortage of food here. It is said that hungry monsters often attack people. In that case, it was unclear why they hadn't come across one of them. But Finn thought it was because of the young master and the twins. Here are 3 dragons with the most powerful energy. No monster dares to approach them. Now I see. In that case, there's no point in hiding and hiding. Khan noticed there was smoke up ahead. Royce was already happy about that and told them to go there immediately. The boys ran happily after the captain, but they didn't expect to see a burning village in front of them at all. The fairy was not happy to see the whole incident either, and she assumed the village was under attack. The maid asked the young gentleman what they were going to do now. At first the boy was silent, but he realized there was a possibility that there were still survivors in the village. They should go there and check it out. The village was destroyed. Monsters and people were dead. Royce walked between all these corpses looking for survivors. It was logical to assume that the village had been attacked by monsters. A fairy flew up to him. The boy wondered if she had found something, But she only shook her head, indicating that there didn't seem to be any survivors here. The twins returned and found no one there either. Connie reported that she was already hungry. He threw them 2 partridge hearts and complimented the twins on your excellent work. Let them eat that first, and then they would go on. Suddenly he noticed a small group approaching there. He immediately grabbed the twins and went to find a hiding place. He managed to hide behind the house. Connie didn't understand why they were hiding. Kang assumed that the scary man was there again. But really, these people aren't scary at all. It's just the increased likelihood of death that's scary. But of course, the twins didn't understand at all what the increased likelihood of death meant. Royce told them to shut up, because those people were getting pretty close. He mentally prayed that they would just walk on by. A subordinate approached the man who was riding on horseback with a report. He was certain that monsters had attacked the village, and unfortunately, there were no survivors to be found. The man accepted this report, and also replied that he would personally report all this to the Grand Duke. He walked over to the carriage where the Duke was sitting as well. The Duke's face was not visible, but he would personally examine everything. The carriage door opened and a Grand Duke named Canberk stepped out of there. The Grand Duke asked if she was sure she wanted to go with him. In her condition, it would be better to stay in the carriage. But she wanted to see it, for she is the wife of a great duke. The people of her husband's lands have died. She should at least honor their memory and comfort the souls of the dead. He accepted her decision. The Grand Duke helped his wife out of the carriage. It was quite a sealing sight. There were many dead bodies of people lying in the streets. She also noticed the corpse of a mother along with her child. The woman couldn't look at it. She began to feel sick. Canberk was worried about her. The woman replied that she was fine, but he knew she was better off staying in the carriage. Does he really want to make her feel uncomfortable? Canberk didn't even know what to say to that. He only sighed at the fact that they had been together for 10 years. But he'd never been able to break her stubbornness. The girl only laughed, saying that it is always the one whose love for their partner is stronger who loses. She asked the other man next to her if there were no survivors. Unfortunately, there were. The monsters are usually quiet this time of year, but yesterday they went on a rampage for some unknown reason. It felt like these monsters were running from something. The Grand Duke thought it was his fault. If he hadn't enlisted all the boys from the village for military training, they would have been able to repel this attack. His wife tried to comfort him. It wasn't his fault. It was only at that moment that the protagonist began to guess that the entire village was destroyed because of them. I mean, he's gonna be so conscience-stricken. Suddenly the guards heard some unintelligible sounds. They were twins. They were immediately alert and told them to come out immediately. Royce didn't realize how much trouble you could cause. These guys should have a break at least some of the time. The man held out his sword and repeated his words for them to come out again. If they don't come out, they'll be in trouble then. The boy didn't understand what they were going to do now. They wouldn't last that long. He warned me. Whatever happens next will be on their conscience. He struck with his sword. The force of that blow destroyed the structure they were hiding behind. Royce shielded himself from the wreckage. And because of this blow, the fairy was hit right by a pile of wood. That's where they and the 3 kids showed up. The man immediately freaked out when he realized who he was attacking. There were children in front of them. This picture moved the Grand Duke's wife. Tears welled up in her eyes. It turned out that there were survivors after all. Royce knew right away that this was a great opportunity. He immediately burst into tears. The twins didn't expect him to behave like that at all. They didn't understand at all what was wrong with Royce or why he was crying. Royce turned and whispered for them to cry immediately. They immediately got his idea and started crying and calling for their mommy. She felt bad for those children. The Duchess held out her hands as if she wanted to comfort them. They threw themselves into her arms, talking about how scary it was. Royce began to realize that these brats were doing even better than he was. Maybe their usual dorky behavior was just an act. The Grand Duke sat down to him and inquired if they were the only survivors or if there was anyone else. The guy continued to further pretend, talking about how they were the only survivors. The Grand Duke stroked his hair. These children have had a hard time. He was approached by his wife, who offered to take these children with him to the estate. He stood up, realizing that they had no choice now. The Grand Duke has ordered his men that they return to the castle. They must make all preparations for that. Royce didn't expect at all that they were going to take them along with them. He didn't even notice when 2 men started dragging him straight to the carriage, after which the carriage set off on its journey. The fairy was watching this. She didn't quite seem to understand the young master's intentions. It was a bathhouse. There was a rubber duck floating near Royce's face. He didn't even realize how it had happened in the first place. Royce had thought they'd just pass them by if they pushed their pity. But even so, the twins had been very believable. He didn't even know these people would turn out to be so good. It seemed like they were wrong, but it worked out even better than it seemed. The twins called the kid. They started splashing water. The water got right on his face. Kanye and Can started laughing with Togo that Royce was very funny. He was even glad these guys weren't worried about anything. The guy heard the maids shouting out that they were very beautiful. These guys are very cute, and their skin is snow white. The maid asked the boys if they liked swimming. Ross didn't like that it was very noisy. Now they have to get dressed and go out to eat. The Duchess was informed that the maids had brought the children. It's like these kids are unrecognizable now. The children must be hungry. So the Duchess invited them to the table. The twins happily pounced on the food. It was something they had been missing for so long. While the boys were gorging on everything at a great rate, Royce was just trying to behave appropriately. But it was encouraging for the Duchess to see these kids. These guys even adapt too quickly. Nevertheless, they need to go get out of here soon. Royce hoped that Finn wouldn't lose his way and would be here soon. He was curious to know where the ferry was now. Meanwhile, Finn was flying. Fairy was sure that the carriage had left in that direction. He must go back to Mr. Royce. If those stupid birds hadn't gotten in her way, she wouldn't have lost track of the Lord. She asked the Lord to wait for her. Finn will be here soon, or maybe she's just hoping it will be soon. Meanwhile, the protagonist was walking through the mansion. He overheard a conversation about how the kids couldn't stay with them forever. So the boy decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. As the woman looks at them, she begins to hear the voice of the Renu. The Grand Duke tried to reassure her. He, too, understands her feelings perfectly. But these kids have nothing to do with their dead baby. It's time to let Rena go. But how could he ever tell a mother to forget her own child? Apparently, they had lost their child not too long ago, so these people treated them well. She took Kanta's hand and asked her to become foster parents for those children. It's obviously not the best solution, especially in this situation. The main character was sitting in a room trying to come up with some sort of plan. It's only been a few days and these people already want to become parents of children. Grand Duke Canberk is one of the 4 rulers of the Winter Continent, and is also a member of the royal family. If becoming the adopted son of a Grand Duke meant instantly becoming a key figure in the country, it must be hard for the Grand Duke's wife. The pain of losing her child is causing her to make bad decisions. They'd better get out of here before they cause more problems. Royce was even saddened by what he'd seen then. If Finn was here, they could discuss their next steps with her. And it was worth it for the guy to just think of the fairy, as he immediately saw her outside the window. The protagonist opened the window, after which the fairy flew to her master with tears in her eyes. Royce was happy to see her too. He wondered at this fairy where she had been for so long. Finn apologized for that. Next time, she should always be there for him. Finn would try to do that. The twins came into the room and noticed Finn had flown in too. They were happy to see her. However, so did the fairy herself. She flew to hug them too. At last they were all gathered. So she thought it was time to continue on her way. Speaking of which, Royce thinks it's necessary to stay here for a while. But Finn didn't understand why he felt that way. Couldn't they just leave? The boy mentioned that those people treat them well. Moreover, the Grand Duke and his wife had recently lost their child. It would be rude to just disappear like that. She was clearly surprised to see such behavior from the young gentleman. Besides, they're not in much of a hurry yet. And if they can gather more information about the Winter Continent, they're definitely the ones on their way. Finn never would have thought the cold-blooded Royce was vulnerable to this sort of thing. However, now she wants to protect this child even more. Since the young master was getting ahead of herself about those people, she decided to offer a solution. He inquired about what Finn had come up with. Dragons all value relationships with other creatures. The Grand Duke and his wife were the first humans they met. Therefore, it is necessary to give them a gift. Since this couple has lost a child, the children should just help to have one. The protagonist only sighed, not knowing what she was talking about, and who was he to do such a thing. Besides, kids aren't easy to have. Suddenly, the thought crossed his mind that they didn't have to wait for the couple to have a baby. The main thing was to get the Duchess pregnant, and then they could disappear with peace of mind. He complimented his subordinate on a great idea. It's very cool to have a cute baby. In that case, it's time to try on the stork look. The Duchess sat on the balcony sipping tea, whereupon she heard the voice of children who came to her to ask her to play with them. The Duchess was glad to see them. The woman noticed they were bored, so she also offered cookies. Royce was watching all of this. He will rely on the twins in this situation. The Grand Duke walked with his subordinates, discussing plans. Afterward, they noticed a cute baby in front of them. At first, the 3 grown men remained silent. The Grand Duke wondered if something had happened and where his friends were. Royce tells him that he has nothing wrong and his friends are with his mistress. The Grand Duke was surprised that this child was not afraid of him at all. Moreover, Royce himself had confirmed it. Usually children are afraid of him, so they don't even approach him. And the baby in front of him is so unusual. He looks too much like his dead child. The Grand Duke took him in his arms, after which he offered to play. Royce didn't mind. The man decided to show this child his office. It had been so long since he had seen a genuine smile on his face. His interlocutor had thought so too. This baby is like a treasure. In the evening, he asked the twins if the mission had been accomplished successfully. Kang called the protagonist a commander, and also replied that everything was done perfectly. He and the Grand Duke's wife drank tea and ate cookies. Simply put, they had fun. Next, Royce inquired about Finn's tome. She had learned that the Grand Duke of Canberk wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning and begins his workday. Lunch is at 12 o'clock, after which he finishes his business, and after dinner they train. Average bedtime is 11 hours, and the average number of contacts with the Duchess during the day is about 5. That was the end of her report. The protagonist complimented her on her work. Connie wanted to ask Royce something, but the boy said to be called Commander. They do as the commander says, yet she didn't understand what it was all for. Kang didn't know that either. What does having a child have to do with them playing with the Grand Duke's wife? What kids they are, after all. But this guy forgets the fact that he is younger than they are. Let them listen carefully. The Grand Duke and his wife are still grieving the loss of their child, so the relationship between them has become a little strained and awkward. Seeing cute kids like this trio of dragons will build a bond between them. The grief of losing a child will subside, and they will gradually begin to feel comfortable around each other. And after that, the night will begin to create a story. The twins didn't understand why they would create history at night. Does it really create better at night? Royce replied that it's a simple expression. Children don't need to know it. And now Royce must get started on the book of 1,000 recipes for the use of elixirs. The subordinate didn't raise why the young master would want recipes for using elixirs. One day he was researching ways to make elixirs more effective. So he found this book at his father's house, and took it to himself. Then his father caught him experimenting with all sorts of elixirs. After Royce's punishment, he keeps the office under lock and key. Royce studied it all to survive. But is it possible to use the knowledge in this way? He has found an elixir for couples who are in a relationship breakdown. Just a few drops are enough to rekindle the fading embers of love. One time is enough. The elixir was created for couples who want to have a child and also has a 100% success rate. He opened the closet. Royce also asked the twins to say that they don't know where the main character is if anyone is looking for him. He used expansion magic. After that, a new space appeared behind the closet. Royce thinks this space will be enough, and now we can start making the elixir. It was night. Finn snuck into the kitchen, looking around first to see if anyone else was here. After which, she took out 2 potions and recalled the young master's words. Royce had told her to sprinkle these potions on tomorrow's food for the Grand Duke and his wife. But you only need to sprinkle on the foods they will eat. But the truth was, the fairy didn't even know what the Grand Duke and his wife would eat of it. She decided not to give it much thought and just pour the potion over all the food. After which she flew into the warehouse. I mean, they'll probably be baking bread, so the potion should get on the grain too. First, she poured the potion into the water. After which, she used her power to lift the water into the air. And that's when she was already using the spread. The potion got on the sacks of grain and flour. She was pleased with the work she had done, and now Finn must quickly report it to the young master. Next night, Royce peeked out from around the corner. Down the hall is the couple's bedroom. If Finn did everything right, then the elixir she put in the food should start working. Suddenly he heard some other conversations. It was the maids. The girl with brown hair told me that Dennis had suddenly confessed his feelings for her. After which she told what was going to happen tonight with them. Her friend was even jealous of it. Royce exhaled. He'd really almost gotten caught. Whereupon he approached the couple's room. They didn't speak to each other for some reason, and were even standing at different sides. The Grand Duke mimed a cough, after which he sighed. His gaze turned to his wife. At the same time, the woman didn't understand why she had been so agitated all day. The Grand Duke touched her shoulder. His wife is so beautiful today. They held hands. Now Royce, too, was now realizing that they were in for a divine night. He was approached by the twins, who asked him what was so divine and what he was even doing here. This approach made the boy afraid. He immediately closed the gate with his hands and looked to see if they noticed them. At the same time, the twins were wondering what was going on there. Royce should tell them everything. He pulled the twins behind him, saying that children didn't need to know such things. They were in pain. Everything that needed to be done has already been done. The next morning, The Duchess rejoiced, for it had been a long time since the weather had been so fine. Afterward, she noticed the maids looking for someone. The woman asked her subordinates and what all the fuss was about early in the morning. As soon as she heard the news, she immediately ran into the room to ask where the children had gone. The girl came in this morning, and the boys were gone. They're still looking for them. The other maid noticed that there was a letter on the table. The Duchess immediately snatched up the letter and read it. She did not understand at all how it had happened. Tom talked about how the Grand Duke and Duchess must have been very much surprised at their departure. However, where there are meetings and there are partings, they leave because their paths were predestined from the beginning. The children are truly grateful for their generosity and hope they can overcome the grief of losing a child. Royce also added a postscript in which he was confident that their relationship with the Grand Duke would only get better, and they will give new life as much love as they gave to these children as well. He also left signatures under Royce's name. Tears came to her eyes, for she realized that this child knew everything, and she had made a mistake. Because of her own greed, she had burdened the poor children. But she wondered what kind of new life the letter was talking about. A few weeks later, the priest revealed that a new life was budding inside the Grand Duke's wife. The Grand Duke took her hands at once, for he was overjoyed. Whereupon she remembered the very letter the kids had left. It was in that letter, wasn't it? I guess those kids knew they were having a baby. They were clearly sent to them by God. They can't help but celebrate such a big event. The Duke has ordered all the storehouses to be opened and bread to be distributed to all the inhabitants. After the bread was baked, it was distributed to the inhabitants by order of the Duke. But that bread was still affected by the potion. That income and the Duchy of Canberg will see the highest birth rate in the history of the continent. The gift that was given to the Grand Duke and his wife, and a small mistake by the fairy, will create a butterfly effect. But there is still a long way to go. At this very time, Royce and the twins' journey continued. The twins loved this trip. They wanted to go out like this more often. Royce reminded us that this journey will continue for at least another 1 decade. The boys wanted to extend this journey to 100 years. Roy remained silent for so long, for he did not understand the enthusiasm of these twins. The fairy tried to encourage the young master. They were delayed in the duchy. If the boys keep running into unexpected situations like this, their travels will be delayed. To shorten the travel time, he needs information on how to do it. Right now, there is no way to shorten the journey. Connie inquired of Royce if the monsters wouldn't come next. He was approached by Khan, talking about how he could tame any monster. And the main character told me that there are 3 dragons roaming around and spreading the scent. No monster can even get close to them. I can't believe they stink. The guys checked and realized they didn't smell anything. Royce wanted to end this conversation by talking about how they all smell. In that case, the boys wondered what about the brigands? Wouldn't even the brigands show up? Right now, they are in the middle of the open countryside and everything around them is just snow. Even if there are bandits here, where would they come from? I can't believe they're coming out of the ground. I guess I shouldn't have said such provocative words. While the kids were sitting in the snow, they were freezing. But they still told these kids to give everything they had. Now that's a real miracle. Bandits came out of the ground. Royce didn't understand at all how this could have even happened. A man with red hair punched his subordinate, saying that they were children. They've been out in the snow all day, and all they got was a bunch of punk kids. What are they supposed to do now? Judging by their clothes, he's not exactly from a wealthy family. So these kids could be ransomed. In any case, it was better than coming back empty-handed. He ordered his subordinates to grab the children. But suddenly they heard a shout for them to stop. Don't these assholes find that odd? But they didn't understand what this kid was talking about. 3 kids in the middle of nowhere all alone. If Royce had been in their place, he would have thought about the situation. Does he mean to say that there are adults around somewhere? But the boy mentioned that there was no one around. In that case, the boys did not understand what he was talking about. Royce simply suggested they think first before doing anything. Finn asked the young master what they were going to do now. In response, Royce asked if she herself had no idea. They must have a lot of loot. He wanted every penny of it. The twins immediately joined in with the captain, talking about wanting to play too. Connie suggested going to the place where the uncles lived. At first, he didn't understand what these kids were talking about, but it's actually not a bad idea. If Royce is going to rob them, we should start with the lair. The man with red hair asked the boys how long they would stand like that. Let them grab those pesky kids. But afterward, he noticed her. One boy raised his hands. With a nonchalant expression on his face, Royce informed them that they were surrendering. They could have them. The bandits clearly didn't expect this. Just don't let them hit the kids. The robbers led the children behind them. The twins were looking around with genuine interest. They were humming a little song. The man turned to his boss and asked if he thought these kids were strange. The man with red hair didn't know what he was talking about. He noticed that these kids are too quiet. They act like they're just out for a walk. So what if they act like it? They'll just trade them for ransom or sell them. To get to the bandit camp, you have to go through a huge door. The twins appreciated the structure. They liked it. He'd only seen such exquisite finishes at his father's estate. Could this really be a den of brigands? The man said that their boss had created all of this himself. Royce asked who their boss was. He was about to tell on his boss when he was punched by a red-haired man. Why the hell is he even talking to these kids? What if this guy blabbed to his parents later? The man apologized. He ordered the children to be taken to the dungeon. After the man locked up the children, he left. Royce informed the fairy that she could come out already. All this time, she was hiding in the main character's clothes. Guy ordered her to scour the area for anything worthwhile, after which Finn flew away. Khan asked the captain if they weren't allowed to go out. Connie complained that it was very boring here. The protagonist told the two fidgeters to sit still until Finn returns. They'll take a tour after that. Since this was the outlaw's lair, there must be a lot of valuable stuff stashed here. He was already excited. Meanwhile, the man with red hair was informed that they were back. Blood Axe Bandit. He is also the boss named Favre. He praised his subordinates for their excellent work and also asked what catch they had brought in this time. The man shook his head, indicating that the catch was not good. The monsters had gotten pretty bad lately, so there was no one around. However, it's not all bad. They came across 3 children on the road. Apparently, these children are the offspring of a wealthy family. They could be ransomed or sold. Favre laughed, saying that was just fine. This is no time to just stand here. He decided to see for himself the people who would make them rich. The twins were asleep, and Royce sat beside them. Afterward, he heard someone walking toward them. Now Favre had seen with his own eyes that these guys really did look like they came from a family with money. Royce saw that the man was quite strong. With that kind of strength, he should be at least level 3. At that very moment, the protagonist wondered if he was definitely an outlaw. Favre noticed the intense gaze on him. It seemed to him as if 2 predatory eyes were watching him. It made the man scared. At first, Royce didn't understand what was wrong, but then he seemed to guess. He turned to the man and referred to him as the big man. Favre wondered if he was saying that to him. Royce's response to that was to ask if he saw another big man here. The man was silent. The boy inquired as to his name. The guy with the red hair couldn't believe how this scumbag dared to address his boss. He probably doesn't even know who he's addressing right now. But then he noticed that the boss had introduced himself, and he didn't understand his boss's condition. Favre doesn't really know what's going on with him. He's probably just sick. But his subordinate didn't understand how he could have gotten sick in the first place. Favre told his subordinate to keep an eye on these children, and he would go to rest. Just then he heard Royce's voices wondering if he was leaving already. Since that was the case, there was nothing to be done. The boy waved him off and said goodbye. He was sure they would meet soon. The boss even ran from the dungeon. The man asked the boss to wait for him. That's also where Finn flew in, who didn't realize what had happened here. She informed the young master that she was already back. Royce asked his subordinate how it had gone. She only sighed, talking about how their storerooms were empty. There was no treasure. It even seemed to her that those bandits would starve to death. And then they ran into some poor people. You should have gotten yourself in such a mess. Although people are also a valuable resource. Finn asked the main character what he was talking about. But the guy replied that it didn't matter, and also praised her for her work. He would be gone for a while, so Finn would have to watch the twins. She clearly didn't want to watch those dragons and asked if she could go with him. Royce explained that if at least Finn wasn't with them, the two would make a mess of things as soon as they woke up. Royce himself would be back soon, with tears in her eyes, but she agreed to carry out this order. He walked over to the bars and was able to pull them apart with ease to get out. The protagonist really wanted to visit the big guy who came by recently. Favre went back to his office. Now he was finally feeling better, and he could breathe a sigh of relief, but he wondered who the brat was. He'd never felt anything like that in his life. It felt as if there was a monster in front of him that he couldn't defeat. A chill ran all over his body, but there's no way that brat fooled him. His senses were probably dulled by the fact that he'd been sitting idle for so long. Suddenly Royce appeared beside him, and with an interested look asked him what he was in such thought about. The man cried out in fright, whereupon he ran to the wall. The little boy greeted him again. Favre didn't even realize how he was able to get out of the dungeon. Royce replied that he had just taken it and walked out. It was no problem for him. After which he approached Favre. He drew his weapon, telling the brat to stay away from him, but Royce just walked on by. The big guy's got a pretty nice room after all. Favre has no idea how the brat got out, but he'll turn a blind eye to the escape if he goes back in now. Royce inquired as to what would happen if he didn't go back there. In that case, he would have to use force. Oh, come on. Royce doesn't want to go back to jail, and the big guy's about to beat him up, if he can. He was pissed off by the lousy guy, after which he attacked. Well, just then he realized he was too tense and swung too hard. But it's too late to do anything. That boy is responsible for provoking Favre. Suddenly he felt he couldn't move the hammer. It was as if something was holding him back. The man asked what was wrong, and why his hands had stopped obeying him. Royce wondered with a mocking look what his problem was. Wasn't the big man about to hit him? Royce began to argue that he was certainly healthy, but that he was clearly lacking in intelligence. And so he tried to attack the protagonist again. And for the second time, his hammer stopped right in front of Royce's face. She kept trying and trying to hit the brat, but it wouldn't work. After which, he set aside his hammer and lay down on the floor to rest. You could tell from the protagonist's face that he was disappointed. Is that really all he can do? Now, Favre didn't exactly understand who the brat was, but it was clear that he was behind it. It seemed to Royce that the big guy already knew the answer to his own question. Favre inquired what he meant. A fairy flew into the big man's office and informed the Lord that the twins were bored out of their minds, and she couldn't stop them. Of course, he recognized the fairy. Finn flew up to him and began to study his face. It was rather odd in her opinion. Favre wondered what she meant. She was sure he gave off an odor like a dwarf. However, at his size, he looked more like an orc. Royce reported that it's a dwarf, and he might even have been born from a mixture of human and dwarf blood. But Finn didn't understand how he could be a dwarf form with a body like that. That's something Royce himself doesn't know. In any case, its very existence is rather surprising. At the same time, the object of their discussion was silent. Only then did he ask the brat how he knew he was a dwarf half-blood. But didn't Royce say the big guy should already know exactly who the boy in front of him is? Let him use the rest of his brain. At first, he couldn't guess at all who this brat was. However, after a second, he realized everything. He remembered a conversation with his father when he was still a boy. The man told his son that dwarves have one peculiarity, how he could meet a creature that would send chills and shivers down his spine, and his whole body and mind would begin to obey him. And if that happens, he should run like hell. But the boy didn't understand what his dad was talking about. He is only half-dwarf, and perhaps that is an advantage. But as long as his father's blood runs through his veins, he'll probably never escape the dwarf fate. In short, if he feels anything like that, he should get the hell out of there. The boy wondered what he would do if he couldn't escape. In that case, he just has to do what he's told. Let just Sonny remember that the best solution when encountering this kind of creature is to run away. Since he's half-human, he's not completely stupid. The boy wondered what kind of creatures they were, since his father was so afraid of them. He closed his son's mouth in a hurry, saying that they have acute hearing, so they always hear everything. So it is better not to open your mouth unnecessarily. There are only one creatures that fit father's description, and they're dragons. So there was no way Favre could assume that he would grab a baby dragon. The protagonist explained with joy on his face that he was right in his conclusions. His instincts were right after all. Though Royce had been a little hesitant about the big man's size, from the first glance at him, the boy felt a resemblance to the dwarfs that Royce's father had used to work in the mansion. Since dwarves were members of an intelligent race, Royce wondered if it was normal for them to work for free for his father. Then Genrerok told Royce not to worry. They had wronged them, so generation after generation was making amends. It's called a blood bond. My father went on to talk about how the dwarves almost wiped out the entire dragon race, but that was all. Royce is a little conscience-stricken, however. Because of the dwarves' fault, the dragon race may have been wiped out, so he has no reason to worry. Favre told that dragon to stay away. It was only then that he realized that the dwarves had the fear of the dragon race built right into their blood. Therefore, Royce proudly declared that Favre would henceforth become his six. You could tell by the look on his face that he didn't want that. Finn informed the young gentleman that calling him a six was a little too much. Now it was the big guy sitting on his knees in front of the little dragon. Royce reassured him, saying that everything would be all right, because his fate was already sealed. He also asked how old the unfortunate Favre was. The man replied that he was 50 years old. Favre is still very young. Royce, on the other hand, is already 250 years old. But considering the age of this dragon, we can assume that he is still a baby. However, Royce began to argue that he was a gallant and noble dragon. He didn't want to be called a baby. Favre had his doubts about these words. However, the boy confirmed that it was true. Royce decided not to beat around the bush and told Favre to work for him for some 10 years. He clearly didn't like that number. Royce explained that there was a possibility that it would be possible to finish earlier. In any case, Favre would be completely free after that. The man then inquired as to what his job would involve. Favre will just have to do whatever Royce says. He has to get them home for the sake of world peace. He didn't understand at all what world peace had to do with these three. Royce asked. He knew exactly what they were, didn't he? Favre replied that they were dragons. Royce also asked what else Favre knew. Favre explained that they are children. Yes, they really are children. But perhaps Favre hasn't heard one very entertaining story, specifically how one warrior killed a baby dragon. After this, the father of the little one became angry and was curbed with rage. It was then that he destroyed the whole kingdom. But now he was beginning to doubt the truth of the story. Royce explained that absolutely any creature would go into a rage if its children were hurt. Moreover, their parents possess zero. Therefore, Favre must realize what will happen if the children get hurt. The world will be completely destroyed by a force of unprecedented proportions. Now, from the look on Favre's face, one could guess that he was beginning to realize the gravity of the situation. However, Favre didn't understand at all why Royce had chosen him to achieve his goal. At first glance, he seemed like someone who would unconditionally follow the orders of the protagonist. But Royce can't say those words, so you have to figure something out. The boy started to explain to you that this is your man of choice. He has such strong, broad shoulders. But all he was really thinking about was that he could be used as a human shield. Favre has the courageous spirit of a true warrior. In fact, with this big guy, the little bugs won't give them any trouble. In the man's gaze, Royce saw unwavering will and loyalty. Of course, because of his blood ties, Favre would not betray him. Is a man like Favre not worthy to be chosen by the dragon himself? This man would make a fine servant. Besides, he had the chance of a lifetime. The man asked what kind of chance he was talking about. He should think about the fact that he would be serving not one, but as many as 3 dragon cubs. If Favre gets them home safely, does he really think his parents will let him go so easily? He will be very richly rewarded for his deeds. Now Favre realized that the little man was telling the truth. Now the big guy must realize how great it is to be chosen. Finn could only think of the young lord growing cunning. Royce asked again if he would go with them this time. Favre enthusiastically informed him that he would. The protagonist asked if he was sure he had no regrets about his decision. The man said that he had no regrets. Those were the words he had been waiting for. Some unknown force began to constrain him. Favre didn't understand what it was at all. Does he really not understand what it is? Now Favre is restrained, but he had no idea at all what it was all about. Royce told him that this is what they call a blood bond. Now the promise he had made to the dragon must be kept. Favre asked this kid what would happen if he didn't fulfill his promise. Royce thinks that nothing bad will happen, but that's just his guess. He's not sure what he's saying. They returned to the dungeon. He huddled in a corner. It was because he couldn't believe he had taken this case voluntarily. Royce advised him to stop whining. He should just do what the protagonist says, and then he won't have any problems. Favre wondered if he was definitely telling the truth now. That ridiculous question was beginning to piss Royce off. If the big man didn't believe it, he could find another dwarf and ask him if Royce was telling the truth. The boy told the twins that the big guy was their temporary guardian from now on. But before that, he wanted to call Favre their 6. Favre introduced himself to them. The twins hadn't even seen a gnome this healthy. This is a first for them. But Damp wondered why he was so tall. Even if Favre is half dwarf, it's impossible for him to be that tall. Favre revealed that he was shorter than his peers at a young age. He was about 20 years old at the time, and he ate some strange berries, after which he was sick for 10 whole years. After these days, he woke up in the morning and noticed that he was taller and stronger. Royce asked if he remembered what those berries looked like. Favre replied that they looked quite unusual, and they looked like bones. He immediately went to look for this description in the book. These berries were under the name of herbalism. They promote growth without side effects. This plant grows in cold climates. It does not flower and produces an average of 3 or 4 berries. The fruits that grow for 200 or 300 years have the greatest effect. Royce immediately showed the book with an open page and asked if they were those berries or not. Favre informed him that they were. The berries he had eaten looked exactly like that. Some sort of plan began to emerge in the protagonist's mind. If he ate those berries, he could be taller than those 2 brats. They were always making fun of Royce, even though there was only a small difference in height between them. Favre informed the protagonist that he was going to go tell the guys he was shipping out. However, Royce stopped him. Favre asked what he wanted to talk about. Royce told him that the return home was postponed for the time being, because they had a more important goal. Now they have to get their hands on the plant. The twins inquired what a plant was and why they should get one, but Royce was in no mood to tell them about it. Favre informed that there was another problem. The protagonist asked irritably what that problem was in the first place. A group of snow orcs have settled in the place where the bush is located, and now they're making it difficult to access the plant. But it doesn't matter. First, he just has to show them where the berries grow, and he would deal with the rest on his own. Favre was even a little scared. They came to the lair of the snow orcs. When they first settled here, there were not many, but now they number in the hundreds. Royce inquired as to where exactly the berries were hidden. The protagonist asked again where the vegetable plants were. He remembers that the berries were right in the center of the orc village, if his memory is correct, but that meant that the orcs might have already destroyed the plants. But the man replied that there was no need to worry about that. It is not on the surface, but in the cave itself. He himself had stumbled upon that place quite by accident. The stupid orcs would never find him. The protagonist turned to these two fidgeters, after which they decided to start. Favre reported in a rush that the snow orcs were much stronger than the regular orcs. Besides, they don't even have a plan. Finn replied that he shouldn't worry about that. But it was obvious that he had his doubts. Even though these guys are kids, don't even underestimate them. Let him watch it closely. Then he will understand why dragons are considered the most powerful creatures on Earth, and why they are feared by all. The orcs noticed someone running towards them. They were 3 small children, but for some reason, a chill ran down their backs. The twins attacked them. With a single blow, he was able to take out one organ. After that, the 2 orcs wanted to avenge their comrade, but Connie decided to take them on. The twins demanded that they stop and not run away from them. At the same time, Favre was amazed at the sight before him. Now he really realized that the dragons in front of him were real dragons. He really did not doubt the power of dragons, but snow orcs were not timid. The man just didn't think they'd run away like that. Orcs are like mice seeing snakes. As brutal as the snow orcs are, the mere sight of a creature that wields incredible power strikes fear into their hearts. Living only on instinct, and orcs will never defeat the mighty dragons. Upon meeting the dragon's gaze, the will leaves the body and only animal fear remains. This is the so-called dragon terror. That's what people call it. But these dragons are still quite young. But after the second hibernation, they would be able to destroy 1 or even 2 snow orcs with just one look. A subordinate of his came running to Favre. Finn spun away, not understanding what he even wanted. A man with red hair asked his boss if he was okay. He heard strange sounds that echoed throughout the canyon. It was only then that he noticed the burning orc settlement. When the man inquired as to who had managed to level a village of snow orcs in the first place, Favre pointed downward. He couldn't believe that's exactly what those kids they grabbed had done. Royce used explosion magic. Kang engaged the vortex of lightning. With just a single whirlwind, the 2 of them were able to destroy many orcs. How in the world did the children they captured manage to destroy the snow orcs? Didn't the boss already know about everything? The man was sure the boss noticed everything at a glance. Favre realized that although they were young, they were strong. Well, you can explain it this way, Finn asked, repeating after her and saying the word of course. He tried to say it confidently. The subordinate thought the boss was tough. After all, a fisherman sees a fisherman from afar. Finn relayed word that Favre had asked the kids to deal with the snow orcs. In this case, it was incredible. He even wondered what kind of monsters they were. Finn started to get angry, because this jerk dared to call her young master a pathetic monster. Favre repeated those words after her. Finn smacked him upside the head, talking about how this one didn't need to be repeated. The man apologized. The subordinate didn't understand at all what was wrong with his boss. Favre explained that these children were not ones to be neglected, so it was better to take good care of them. After that, a snow orc boss appeared there and took a swing at the protagonist, but he didn't expect at all that such a small boy could stop such a destructive force. Now that the pisser is done, it's now turn for Royce. The protagonist has dealt the boss a blow, after which the snow orc flew backwards. Royce didn't like the fact that he could defeat a snow orc with a single punch. It was too easy. A man with red hair asked if they were definitely supposed to be taking care of these guys. Finally, they're done with those pesky orcs. The main character praised the twins for a job well done. He also tossed them some food to eat. Royce said that he would go somewhere, and they could rest here for now, after which he noticed Favre, his subordinate. He didn't like that Favre didn't run with them, or what he was even standing there for. Favre noticed Royce beckoning him over. He told his subordinate to wait here. Now the boss has to come down. The man asked if he should go with him. Favre inquired if he meant it. Then the man realized that he was the best one to hang around. He approached the young gentleman and inquired what he needed. At first Royce asked where something was, but he didn't specify exactly what. So Favre didn't understand what the little dragon was talking about. In response, Royce asked where the plant is located. They approached the chest of stones. If they go through this small gap, they will come right out to the cave. Favre thought it was strange that last time he was able to get through here safely. Royce told him to stay here. He said the cave would appear right away. That's where the main character got in. Some sort of glow caught his eye. And as he passed on, the sight startled Royce. In front of him stood the very plant he had been searching for. On this small bush grew berries called vegetashka. He immediately ran to this miracle drug that would give him growth. But the guy was interested in something, and that was that somehow these berries were so small. They were even much smaller than described in the book. It appears that the fruit is quite young. It will take about 200 years for them to grow to the right size. Eating them now would have no effect. The boy didn't know what to do now. Afterward, Favre noticed that the protagonist had returned. He asked if Royce had found what he wanted. It was just as Favre had said. The bush was indeed there, but the berries were quite small. Favre asked the boy what they were going to do now. But does Royce have any choice now? He would just wait for the yachts to grow to the right size. The man inquired, but what if they leave the berries here and someone steals them? The protagonist didn't even want to hear the word steal. Favre was scared. If they really want to do it, just let them try. He will personally deal with all of them. There was a protective barrier there, as well as signage. This plaque said not to enter the cave that was Royce's property. Trespassers and all his descendants up to the 9th generation would be cursed. Royce remembered that the man had subordinates, so they could just use them. Favre didn't understand why Royce needed his subordinates. The protagonist started to get angry, for he thought Favre was against it. However, the half-breed said to use whoever and however he wanted. Royce used holy power to set traps, but it won't be enough. So he needs someone to keep an eye on the place. A crowd of Favre's subordinates stood before him, but it felt like these guys were out of it. Royce inquired if there wasn't one savvy man among his boys. For his future growth, he will spare nothing. No longer will he have to settle for short-term trappings. The guys didn't understand why they were all gathered here. Another man thought that war must be coming. The red-haired man couldn't even understand what these monsters were up to. All of them heard a loud voice greeting the esteemed Bloodaxe brigands. Royce has gathered everyone here to deliver some important news. This news said that the Bloodaxe clan would be disbanded from today. The guys couldn't understand who gave this brat that right in the first place. The man asked his boss what was going on. Did he really agree with this monster? But Favre only remained silent. Royce called out to the twins, after which he informed them that they could begin. They were clearly uncomfortable, because people didn't understand what they wanted to do. But one thing was clear. The little ones must not come near them. Suddenly he was hit on the head, like the other two that were standing next to him. Royce praised the twins for doing the right thing. They need to set these people's minds back on track. He could only mentally apologize to his boys. A little while later, they finally finished. That crowd of people really thought they were going to die this time. Royce petted Connie, indicating that these guys had done a very good job. It was noticeable that Connie wanted to be petted too. That's the sad reality. They can't even stand up to two ordinary uncles. Well, the fact that they're dragons is best left unsaid, but there's no reason to worry. He's bound to make them better. Even the squirrel got scared and ran away screaming that they were putting too much force into their legs. Royce was displeased that their eyes were apparently only for beauty. Why aren't they ducking at all? Their bodies were shaking, and they could not even get up. The men begged to be spared. These blows were too fast. He only sighed disappointedly, seeing that these guys were just plain weaklings. Royce gave them 10 minutes to rest. The guy lying in the snow even began to think he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe he should just pretend he was out. The man with the red hair and thought that was a good idea. That brat wouldn't hit anyone lying down. Arthur offered to escape. In response, the man asked if he didn't know that those who tried to escape and were forced to train at night. But they weren't even warriors. Arthur didn't understand why they were doing all this. The man mentioned that he was too loud, which means it's a long way from fainting. He didn't even have his head in the clouds, so the days went by much faster. Arthur didn't know what to do, so he just cried. He doesn't understand what this is all about at all. Every day and getting beaten up. However, instead of just dying, the next day his body is perfectly fine. Now Royce, too, saw that everything was going exactly according to his plan. The kid puts a potion in their dinner that restores their strength, so they feel invigorated in the morning. And during training, Royce uses a holy power that affects their mind and motivation. The protagonist trains these guys using martial arts books that belong to his father. The bandits will get better day by day. These books are from the dragon's library, and passing on knowledge to such stupid creatures is a waste of time. However, Royce has no choice as they have to get stronger in a short period of time. These guys don't even seem to realize how lucky they are. Favre approached him. Royce asked if he had done everything his protagonist had asked him to do. He's really done everything. In that case, it's great. Favre can go and get ready and Royce will come up with the rest. Lions throw their cubs off a cliff to make them stronger. Favre wondered what this guy was up to this time. They all gathered as if on a camping trip. The two didn't understand why they had been brought back together. On top of that, they were given some other strange bags. The boss said to do it, so they just follow the order. A small group was told to move out of the way. There was a catapult they certainly didn't expect to see here. Favre brought her in. The man asked the boss what they needed the catapult for now. If they were going to attack someone. Suddenly they all heard Royce's voice. They must be wondering why they were all here. But instead of explaining everything, they would just show. Royce beckoned to his aid. Connie ran toward the catapult, after which she happily sat there. Now they were vaguely beginning to guess what awaited them. But the boys just couldn't believe it. Royce told his assistant to get ready to depart. Connie raised her hand and indicated that she was ready. Whereupon he ordered the catapult to be launched. Connie flew overhead, and it was noticeable that she was very happy about it. But the men thought it was just crazy. These little guys are clearly out of their minds. Favre even turned to God. Now he realized what Royce's words to throw off the cliff meant. Connie started falling down, and the guys realized that she was going to crash this way. But just then her parachute opened. Once again, he was convinced that catapult and parachute were a perfect combination. The others would have to do the same, but it was noticeable that they were all morally depressed. Royce thought that these guys just didn't get the point, and if they did, they would just have to demonstrate it one more time. Now he called a second assistant to the test. It too was launched from a catapult. However, the can was also a lot of fun, and that's when his parachute opened. Even though they were light, they flew even farther than Royce had thought. But it turned out pretty good. Even the elixirs were useful. It's a simple thing to do. First they fly, and then they plunge into the snow. Arthur couldn't take it, and he started running with tears in his eyes, begging for mercy. He was too young to die. Royce didn't like this outcome. He snapped his fingers, after which a barrier was erected there. Arthur noticed it, but he did not stop but ran onward, after which he struck the barrier. He is well aware that these people are scared, but they have to have courage, and then they will succeed. The man with the red hair thought they should get an opinion from someone who wasn't as crazy as those two. He was supported. Royce started to argue that they could make it work, but just then he looked at Favre. They might have a little more courage if they were given an example by someone they know. Favre was already scared, for he didn't understand why this dragon was looking at him like that. Royce asked Favre if he could handle the case. The man began to explain that he had developed a fear of heights. The protagonist informs the guys that their boss has a fear of heights. Let them help him climb the catapult. The man decided to help. It's all the boss's fault. Then why are they the only ones suffering? Tech. He's the one who brought that catapult here. He called them assholes and told them to let them go. But all he heard was Favre saying it was all Favre's fault. Everyone was of one mind that the boss was responsible for this madness. They began to pull him towards the catapult. Favre begged to be let go, after which he was launched into the air. The poor man was already crying. Royce was worried that he wouldn't take off because of his large body mass, but it came out very well. Surely they must be happy with what they've done by now. The protagonist asked who would be next. They seem to have forgotten that they have to do it too. Some are already starting to miss their parents. All that could be heard now were the screams of people. 4 weeks later, Royce didn't even know if that would be enough. No matter how good this martial arts book is, it is only a temporary measure. If someone really strong comes along, Royce Berry will be stolen. To be prepared for anything, you have to use a higher level of martial arts. And right now, Royce didn't have that book with him. There is only the Hero King's martial arts book, but there was one small problem. The information in the book is so complicated that he can't even understand anything. He had no time at all to study it. Royce didn't know where he could get a simpler book and what he should do now. He was approached by the twins who asked him what he was doing now and why he was so pensive. Those kids scared him too much. Kang noticed that it's a book about martial arts. If he's studying, it's pretty boring. Royce inquired if by chance they ever saw such martial arts. He informed that, of course, they had seen these. Connie told him that Dad's library was full of them. That's already encouraging. The protagonist asked if they had studied anything from there. Turns out, Connie had studied as many as 5 books like this, and Khan said he had studied 10. The guys started arguing about who had learned more martial arts. Even though these two are being silly, they are still dragons. Among what they studied, there would surely be some martial arts that would be useful. Royce offered to describe the martial arts they were studying instead of arguing now. That way, they could prove their point. Connie didn't understand why they should do that, and Can was just lazy. But don't these guys argue about who has studied the most? Royce suggested a bet to see which one of them knew more martial arts, and now they were enthusiastic to win this competition. That's to be expected. Children should be spoken to in their own language. It's been quite a while. The whole candle is almost halfway burned out. Connie was happy to report that she was the first to finish. But Khan was sure he was the first to finish. Royce was surprised they were able to write so much, but it was suspicious that they had used so many sheets. So Royce was sure they had written a lot of nonsense. But once he started reading what the twins had written, he was surprised and immediately continued reading the rest. And now he's done. It's really incredible. Here was a perfect timeline of martial arts information about 11 books. Kang wondered who had won the bet, and Connie was sure that she had won. Kang began to argue that he was the one who had won. Connie argued that she had written more than her brother, but Royce reported that these guys were a draw. Of course, the twins didn't even know what that meant. Connie really did write more information than Ken. Kana, however, has it written in more detail, so Royce decided it was a tie. The twins were upset, because it was no fun that way. Finn flew up to the young lord and did everything Royce asked. Favre was almost done as well. It had happened quite in time. The main character now has higher-level martial arts materials. It's time to start showing things off. Another 2 weeks later. There was no realizing these guys anymore. He changed quite a bit himself too, and told these guys to welcome them. They welcomed the protagonist. Royce was very pleased with the work they had done. They were well done for making it through 6 weeks of intensive training. The guys were excited about it too. Surely they were wondering why Royce had made them do this hellish training. They were silent in response. The boy decided to reveal the reason to them. A bright golden glow appeared in front of them. The guys didn't understand at all what this was even about, or what was in store for them this time. They then noticed that some creature with golden hair and white robes appeared in front of them. Of course, he didn't know what it even was either. But this creature was much more than the average human. As it turned out, it was the warrior god Kalos. The god reported that all these people had been chosen by him. A legendary being called the warrior god Kalos. He was an ancient god who fought against the demons that wreak havoc in this world, and it is said that mountains of demon corpses were stacked around him. When such a powerful creature appeared before the brigands, they froze in terror and fear. At this very moment, Royce was inside the warrior god Kalos. A Kalos illusion that was created by refracting and reflecting light using spatial visualization. So far, so good. Suddenly he noticed that there was a gap in his side. He immediately reported it to the twins. The kids moved out to fix the hole. After that hole started to disappear. The protagonist praised the twins for a great job. Now you need to expand the space and apply the power attribute. Royce's voices began to broadcast through the illusion, saying that they were indeed all the chosen ones. They must be prepared for the calamities that will come upon the earth in the distant future. These people will be the light that illuminates the coming darkness, and the sword that destroys evil. He thinks that's enough. Now we need to ingrain that mental mantra in their heads. The warrior god Kalos used sealing. Now the humans were ready to fight in the name of the warrior god Spike. Royce showed Finn that now it was her turn. It was an elixir specially created by this young master, and if you pour this elixir out all at once, there's a really great effect. Then they noticed that this tree had become so gigantic. This is clearly a real miracle. Kalos, the god of wars, explained that this is a sign and symbol of the god's promise to the people. In return, they must show their loyalty to God. They all looked in the direction the god was pointing. Now it's the turn for Favre. He hit the rocks. The rocks began to crumble and opened a passage into the cave. If they pass into the cave of testing, they will receive that blessing of God and the gifts. They were serious about serving in the name of Kalos. In the cave, Royce left a martial arts book that the twins had written, as well as his books of sacred power. Favre has set all sorts of traps in the cave, so it won't be easy to get through them. Royce can't just give them the books for nothing. Kalos, the god of wars, addressed the chosen warriors. He told them that he would return again if they could save the tree. Therefore they must trust God and wait. After that, the illusion was gone. Now he realized what they had been going through all that hellish agony for. It turned out they were the chosen ones, and all the hardships they had overcome were a test. Everyone else also began to believe that they were special. They also began to praise the warrior god Kalos. Royce said it was the perfect end to the mission, and he was happy with what he had been doing all along. And the twins loved the fun. They wanted to organize something else. Royce thanked them for that praise. Favre looked at these children, as well as the fairy, in silence, after which he looked at his subordinates. His guys really believe that they are the chosen ones. This tree, and the whole place around it, will be considered a sacred place. They will put their lives on the line, but they will protect what they believe in. He felt sorry for those guys. Without even realizing it, they had become watchdogs. But suddenly he realized something. Since those guys are the watchdogs that guard the house, he is the dog that will be walked on a leash. His dignity had been violated. Royce asked the man what he was even doing there. It was time for them to move out. He stood up, talking about what was on its way. The twins asked Royce where they were going now. They wanted to find something else very interesting. Meanwhile, there's a silver blossom in the city. He looked at the ground. Genrerok was curious to see if Royce was eating well there. As important as the elder's position was, he shouldn't have left Royce alone. He didn't even realize where his father had gone at such an important time. It would be nice if he could keep an eye on Royce. He has mountains of work to do now, but if he does something up front, he can sneak away for the day. Suddenly he heard a question about where he was in such a hurry. It's not like he's going to abandon his sacred duty and run away. Genrerok was shocked by such questions. But of course, he pretended he didn't know what the dragon was talking about. However, Genrerok was also curious as to what Carlos was doing here. He is also the father of Connie and Kana. Carlos possesses the mind attribute, and he is at level 0. Of course, he came here to watch the Genrerok. He must have nothing better to do. Just keep him busy and get rid of this miracle. But it was obvious that he wasn't even going to leave. Carlos had been stubbornly ignoring Genrerock. He noticed the communication device that stood on the dragon's desk near the stack of documents. Carlos had shown that he was bored here, so he had come to entertain him. But it seemed to Genrerock that it was only himself who was bored here. And he was right about that. The balloon lit up, and Royce's portrait appeared there. Of course, Carlos suspected that Genrerock was worried about Royce. He remained silent. It's clear now that Genrerock wanted to get off and meet his son. He tried to pretend he didn't know what he was talking about. But Carlos only laughed. You'd think they'd know about the prohibition against unauthorized escape. What's he gonna do if he gets caught? The elders would certainly notice if Genrerock left the place. But what of Togo if he is caught? He's a complete fool. He couldn't care that much about his son. He asked if Carlos didn't worry about his children at all. Of course, he doesn't care one bit about Connie and Kanya. And that's what Genrerock couldn't understand. He must know how much those twins love Royce. They said that as soon as they were bored, they'd go to him. Royce wasn't really that smart. But Carlos was sure that he would take better care of his children than he could. It wasn't even something to brag about. Genrerock is overprotective of his son. Moreover, Royce is not a normal newborn. Not only is he endowed with 4 attributes, but he also has a unique mindset. Royce is one of the strongest dragons in the world. He is one of the strongest dragons in the world. Henry was blessed, but for some reason, he didn't believe it much himself. He was a little uneasy. He must stop worrying about Royce and think about himself. Soon, Genrerock won't have the freedom his son has. Besides, he didn't have to worry about the twins bothering Royce. Carlos had warned them not to bother him too much. It's troubling for Togo that the twins inherited Carlos's character, both of them. Carlos laughed, asking his friend if he thought so too. They're always trying to do something. That's what Carlos told them. If they make a mess, they don't try to solve it themselves. They ask Royce to do it. His kids would cause trouble, but Royce could fix it. He could only laugh at that. Still, Carlos realized it was the perfect plan to raise his 2 little ones. There was an explosion. The general was going to open his skull and see what was going on in his head. And Carlos was trying to calm him down. In the meantime, Royce and his team. The guy's sick of someone calling him all the time. But if they don't call him, then Royce won't even pay attention to them. Those kids are like a headache to him. Just make them stop screaming. They immediately hugged him and laughed. Royce demanded that they get off of him, but they didn't want to do that. They liked Royce a lot, after all. At the same time, the protagonist could not understand what he had done so badly in his past life, why he was given such a punishment. Then Favre arrived there with a wagon and a harnessed horse. Favre boasted that he had complied with the young master's instructions that he prepare the wagon. It was exactly what they needed. Now it would be much easier to get around. Royce asked Favre where the nearest port to the west was located here. The nearest port to the west is at Lufthansa. From there are constant ship departures to the Fall continent. This time the boy wondered how long it would take to get to Togo's place. Favre replied that it would take about 6 months. But because of the frequent snowfalls, which will prevent them from traveling, it will take a year or even a little more. In fact, it's even much longer than Royce first thought. And because of unforeseen circumstances, it could take longer. Royce wondered if there was even a quicker way to get there. But Favre didn't even know about it. On the winter continent, the horse-drawn carriage is the fastest way to travel. And unfortunately, there is no other faster transportation, so they'll be stuck here for another year, if not more. That's not good news. Favre turned to Mr. Royce, and the lad inquired what had happened. Favre asked if the young lord had any way of contacting other dragons. Seeing this displeased look on the chief surgeon's face, Favre began to explain that of course the gentleman must have thought of it. It was just that if he had familiar dragons on the winter continent, Royce could simply ask to take the children and Favre. That was a smart idea. Why hadn't he thought of it before? There are probably dragons dwelling here, so why not just ask one of them to help? But only then did the protagonist realize that there was one problem. Favre wondered what the problem was. As it turned out, Royce had no familiar dragons here, and that was really unfortunate. Royce asked Finn if she might know anyone here, but unfortunately, the fairy wasn't familiar with other dragons. Kang and Kanye didn't know anyone either. But for some reason, they announced it even with pride. But the truth was that Rojsa had expected nothing else from those two. But if they manage to find at least one dragon, then the time to return home will be greatly reduced. But there is one question. Where do you even look for them? The boy asked Favre if he might know any stories about dragons. He does know a few stories, however. There is a town on the road to the west, and there you can find information about dragons. That's something. In that case, they wouldn't waste her time, and would go there now. Of course, the twins were excited to go in search of other dragons. A new adventure was opening up before them. A little while later, Favre stopped the wagon. The day is nearing its end, and the city is still a long way away. That's why he thought that a rest stop would be the best solution. Royce agreed. At the same time, the twins were already asleep. They started a fire and decided to cook themselves a meal. The twins thought it all looked very appetizing. They were obviously hungry. Khan asked Favre when it would be ready. Favre asked them to wait a little longer. He sprinkled salt on the meat. After that, he handed the meat to the small dragons, saying that it was now safe to eat. Favre advised Mr. Royce to give it a try as well. And as soon as Royce took a bite, he realized it was pretty good. And the marinade was delicious. Favre thanked him for that praise. Royce asked if he could continue that story. Favre had talked about a dragon once being seen on Mount Kesh Tower. A hunter lives in the town they were passing through. He said that about 20 years ago, a monster had been killed in his village, mistaken for a dragon. A bone flew into his head. If he speaks of dragons, he should speak with respect. Are dragons really his friends? Favre began to explain that this was not the case. And what a monster. Does Royce have to show what a real monster means? Favre started to apologize. He's looking at Favre, and he's getting a little cocky. Let him talk about it properly. That hunter told me that 20 years ago, a noble creature similar to the Dragon Lord was seen in his village. It was as big as a house, and its screams deafeningly loud. The whole village shook then in terror. Royce thought it sounded kind of weak and even implausible. Besides, there was no new information about the dragon in the story. He remembered that a nobleman from a neighboring estate had sent a large squad to investigate, and even hired mercenaries who specialized in huge magical creatures. Royce asked, and what came of it? As it turned out, that unit was never heard from again. It is assumed that they were all destroyed. Only one weapon remains of them. There have also been other cases of people disappearing on Kesh Tower Mountain. And since then, few people have traveled there. It turns out a huge squad that was sent to investigate has gone missing. And this story is a very interesting one. The mountains where the supposed dragon dwells are along the path. Given the information we've received, it's likely that there really is something there. However, Royce feels that it is not a dragon, but some other, very powerful monster. This monster could handle a huge army. So it's not clear whether it's worth the risk. Suddenly felt something. Favre asked the gentleman what was wrong. Royce sensed that something was heading toward them. Favre immediately took up his hammer, assuming it was a monster. Royce, however, replied that it was a man, but he was alone. he decided to deal with the man himself. Favre immediately shouted into the darkness who was there. Let him show himself at once. At first nothing was heard, but then they heard a voice saying that they didn't need to exert themselves so much. There was a man in a raincoat. When the man took off his cloak, a cute blonde man named Jacob Troughton showed up there. And he was glad to meet them. Jacob walked by and noticed the light from the campfire. Jacob Troughton. The name seemed familiar to him. Royce tried to figure out where he'd heard it before. Jacob apologized for his sudden visit, but asked to stay here for a while. Favre refused, because there are children here. He saw the twins. Jacob realizes that he should be careful around strangers. Besides, he came by at this late hour. In that case, Jacob will go. Favre wanted Mr. Royce to praise him for chasing the stranger away. In the meantime, the protagonist was busy trying to figure out who Jacob Troughton was. That's when he immediately remembered the last name Trugon. Royce told Favre to transfer him back, but Favre didn't understand why they had to do that. Royce began to get angry, telling him to act immediately. So Favre had no choice but to go after that guy. If this is the same last name Trugon that Royce is thinking of, this guy needs to be caught immediately. Lavina is a brilliant druid who summons the Berserk Revenant. She's one of the warriors who will defeat Genrerok in the future. And that girl's last name is exactly Trugon. If this guy really is the ancestor of the Avalanche, Royce just can't let it go. The guy would be approached by Favre, who explained that he seemed like a pretty good person, so Jacob could join them. The blonde man thanked him for that. Jacob noticed the boy's intense gaze on him, and thought his face was stained. Royce assumed that Jacob must be very strong if he was traveling and in a place like this alone. But Jacob only laughed at those words about how they thought he was really traveling alone. Who told those kids he was alone anyway? Royce didn't understand what the man was talking about. You wondered what Jacob was talking about. Since these guys are so interested, he decided to show off his companion. He started whistling. Royce immediately sensed the mind attribute. Even though it felt faint, it was definitely the mana of the mind attribute. Now Favre didn't understand what was going on either, but as soon as he looked up into the sky, he immediately realized everything. You could see from his face that he was puzzled. A bird called the six-winged blade appeared in front of them. The six-winged blade landed in front of Favre and the children. It felt as if this bird was not happy with those who stood before it. Favre, too, seemed to sense the hostility and grabbed his weapon. He was stopped by Jacob, saying that everything was fine. This is the creature he summoned, and his name is Minky. Such a formidable creature has a rather ridiculous name. It's a six-winged blade. They say the adults can compete with the wyverns. So Favre didn't understand how Jacob had managed to retrain such a ferocious beast. Jacob revealed that he has been raising this kid since he was a baby. Minky is obedient, so the boys don't have to worry. Only then did Favre begin to guess that Jacob was a druid. The blonde confirmed those words. But the truth was that he had very little experience at all. Now Royce's hunches were beginning to come together. In front of him is a druid with the surname Trugon. Looks like it's really an avalanche hideout. Royce asked Uncle Jacob if he was married, but he said he wasn't yet. The boy then asked if he had sisters or possible other relatives with the same last name. Jacob explained that he is the only child in the family. Only he and his father use the last name Trugon. It's definitely him, the enemy of the protagonist's father. But of course, this is the future. Jacob didn't understand why the boy was asking about it. Royce told him that he was just curious. Killing him would be a bit cruel, so you need to make sure he can never have offspring. For some reason, goosebumps crawled up his body. If Jacob was cold, have him move closer to the fire. The blonde man thanked again for that. He noticed that the twins came up and marveled at such a large bird. It was the first time they had seen such a thing. Jacob told them not to get too close. Minky is very sensitive to strangers if he's not around. But the bird didn't react at all. Not even when Khan climbed on top of it. Connie noticed that the bird was very fluffy. It was like a blanket of duck feathers. Well, Jacob thought it was dangerous anyway. Royce pushed the rascals away, talking about not touching other people's animals without asking. The twins were upset. Afterward, he turned his attention to the bird. Of course, the dragon aura couldn't be hidden, and Minky also already knew about Royce's true nature. Jacob immediately ran to protect the child, but it was only then that he noticed his summoned beast lay on its back. He let Royce pet himself. It was obvious that the protagonist liked it. Suddenly, Jacob realized that Minky had never behaved like this even in front of him. The twins really liked such a warm and fluffy bird. Tonight they wanted to sleep on it. Jacob was already wondering who these children were. Of course, Favre couldn't reveal their true nature, so he said they were his nephews. It's morning. Jacob was very grateful to them for the night. He didn't even know how to thank them. Royce demanded that Favre make the druid come with them. Favre realized it himself, so he offered to join them, since they were going in the same direction. But Favre didn't know what to do with his pet now. However, there was no need to worry. Minky would follow them. Royce then turned to his so-called uncle, saying that it was already time for him to move out. The bird took off as well. Favre got back into the wagon and hit the road. While the boys were in the wagon, Royce asked Jacob where he was going. Jacoba told him that he needed to get to Kesh Tower Mountain. Now Royce was wondering what he wanted there. Jacob thought that there might be something on that mountain that would make his dream come true. Royce began to guess vaguely what kind of dream he was talking about. But it was absurd, and his hunch was confirmed. Jacob wanted to tame the dragon. Of course, Royce didn't like it, and Favre could only silently speculate what would happen afterwards. Dragons are the most powerful creature on Earth. Such legendary creatures are the dream of every druid. Having tamed a dragon, he will no longer be afraid of anything in this world. The thought alone makes his heart flutter. Favre replied that he had chosen a rather dangerous dream that would be very difficult to realize. In pursuit of such a dream, one could even die. That's why he calls it a dream. But Jacob believed that one day he would be able to tame the dragon. Royce was already thinking about finishing off this druid here and now. He doesn't even know what kind of creature dwells on Kesh Tower Mountain, but Royce is certain that it isn't even a dragon. But even if for some reason there really is a dragon dwelling there, it won't leave the jerk who decided to tame it alive. Then the birth of an avalanche is out of the question. In that case, there's a good chance that Kesh Tower Mountain is home to a thunder tiger. If Jacob can tame this tiger, he will become an avalanche berserker. And Royce isn't going to let that happen, so he needs to make the move first. The boy recognized that Jacob had such an incredible dream. Royce hoped that this dream would come true for him. Jacob promised to give the boy a ride on the dragon later. Favre, on the other hand, hoped that this poor boy's death would not be agonizing. Kesh Tower Mountain was in front of them. Jacob thought it was a perfect morning to meet a real dragon. Royce climbed out of the wagon, who thought the thought was true. Surely it must be a beautiful morning for the dragon, too. Jacob wished him a good morning. The protagonist asked if he'd seen the twins by any chance. As it turned out, he didn't see those guys. But weren't they sleeping in the wagon with them? Favre also wished everyone a good morning. Royce asked his uncle if he knew where the twins were, but he didn't see them either. Where could those rascals have gone this early in the morning? They must be in trouble by now. After that, he turned his attention to Finn, who had found the twins. Now he wondered where they were. She didn't even know how to explain it. Afterward, Royce heard his name being called. They were twins. Connie asked to see what kind of cat they had found. Con asked if cats could be that big. He thought it was a dog. It's not a cat, and it's certainly not a dog. He thought it was impossible. In front of them was a thunder tiger. After which they placed the thunder tiger right in front of Royce. The twins thought he was very cute and wanted to take him with them. They would raise him. For starters, they should tell us where they even found it. Connie reported that it was on the mountain. Con said that he came up to them and wanted to play with them. So they played with him. Royce had indeed planned to find the creature, but not in the same way. Jacob still couldn't believe it was really a live thunder tiger. The twins stood up for their pet, talking about how it was their Nabi. Those brats already gave him a name. After which he turned his attention to the tiger. As it turned out, the tiger was no longer out. But as soon as he noticed Royce looking at him, he immediately pretended to be asleep. Of course, Royce noticed that he was already awake. You could even see it in his fluttering eyelids. And his breathing was ragged and intermittent. The boy's mind closed in on whether the tiger was definitely out right now. He decided not to pretend anymore and started growling at the protagonist. The twins were glad that Nabi was awake. Royce didn't like it at all when the creature started growling at him. Tiger began to sway from side to side in pain. This was something Jacob certainly didn't expect. This boy punched a thunder tiger. Favre explained that his nephews were simply fearless. But Jacob clearly didn't believe that. Poor Nabi. Khan even wanted to blow on his wound. Fearlessness is out of the question here. This is the second time they've knocked out the thunder tiger. Favre had nothing to say to that. Even though he's a unique creature, even though he's still a cub, from the looks of it, he's growing up without a mother. There's something wrong with him. Suddenly he felt a powerful aura. It must be the tiger's mom coming this way. Jacob and Favre felt it too. They heard some sound. Then a huge creature appeared. Jacob thought it was Drake, but just as he was about to say it, Royce covered his mouth. You should be quiet now. If they move, they will attract his attention. We need to hide now. The protagonist used the attribute of space, invisibility. After that, they disappeared. Jacob immediately recognized spatial magic. In a short period of time, a space of enormous size appeared here. He didn't even realize how this kid managed to do something like that. Drake walked beside them. He didn't even seem to notice them. Not only was Jacob seeing a thunder tiger in person today, but he was seeing a Drake he hadn't seen in 100 years. What the hell is going on here? But only then did he realize that it was not a dragon at all that dwelled on Kesh Tower Mountain. This is where the Drake lives, which means the dragon isn't there. Looks like his dream won't come true today. But he turned his attention to the boy who had sensed Drake's presence faster than anyone else. Moreover, he had managed to create space instantly. It was unclear who he was and where he got such skills from. Only a genius would have that kind of ability. I wonder if this boy is one of them. But suddenly they noticed that Drake was starting to rage. Royce didn't understand at all what Drake was doing here. He asked Finn if there was any way to overpower the creature. The fairy told me that drakes were demonic dragons. That is, creatures that were created from the blood of demons. Only a few of them have dragon blood in their veins, so fighting against it is pointless. In order to defeat this creature, you will need at least a few first-level individuals. Therefore, to fight this creature would mean instant death for them. He lives deep in the mountains, so it's unclear why Drake left his lair. Maybe he's looking for something. Royce turned his attention to the tiger cub. I wonder if Drake is following him. Fortunately, he decided to leave. Royce exhaled a sigh of relief. Drake seemed to have given up and left, but the weather was beginning to change. It had been quiet for too long, and 2 lightning bolts appeared in the sky. 1 lightning bolt hit Drake, and the second was directed, of course, toward the protagonist. He prepared his device to absorb her. Fortunately, this bracelet did its job perfectly. He exhaled again in relief, but it was only then that Royce noticed he was standing right in front of Drake. Only then did he realize that his magic had been destroyed. Therefore, they had nothing left but to run. Here on the real scary thing was that the creature was running after them. Royce told them to shut their mouths and run as fast as they could, but it was noticeable that Jacob didn't have good stamina. Favre advised the druid to run before Drake tore him apart. It makes sense about Favre, but why are these kids so fast? His hunch is confirmed. These are unusual children. He heard a cry for caution, and it was only when Jacob turned around that he noticed Drake right behind him. He had to call on his bird. Minky immediately attacked Drake. It was a great chance. Minky could buy them time that way. Finn reported that the drakes are moving slowly from side to side, therefore they need to run past the trees. Royce told his group to run you toward the mountain, after which Minky flew away. It was noticeable that Drake was furious. He attacked the bird. After that, Minky began to fall. Jacob immediately changed his direction to save Minky. Favre tried to stop him. They definitely wouldn't be able to overpower Drake, who even a 6-winged blade couldn't resist. They will survive by running toward the mountain. However, he couldn't leave that druid to die. Royce was angry, but he ran to Jacob anyway. If they survive here, Royce will really make sure that Jacob can't have children. Favre could not understand such a decision by the Lord about the twin, asked that Royce wait for them. They were also being watched by a tiger cub. He looked toward the mountain at first, but decided to run after them. Jacob asked as Minky woke up, but the bird was wounded. And at the same moment he was bitten by Drake, whereupon Jacob attacked the bloody bastard. His tack had hit Drake. However, there wasn't a scratch on his body either. He became even more furious. Then he decided to attack his abuser. Jake was only helped by watching in horror at what might happen next. A small hand grabbed him by the hood. It was Royce who told that asshole to get out of the way. Fortunately, Drake's tail didn't hit the target. Royce utilized space changes. That's where the crystal appeared, after which he engaged to this crystal of rotation. And then Royce launched this attack at Drake, and it hit right on target. Jacob begged for Minky to wake up. It seemed for now the bird was still alive. Drake bit into the main character's attack. Royce didn't understand how this was even possible. How this creature could destroy his magic and just chew on it. In that case, it engages the attribute of reason. Fall. There was nothing Drake could do. Now that he's caught, let him fall. But suddenly he shattered whatever was restraining him. How come mind magic doesn't work on him at all? The fairy reported that Drake has nothing but animal instincts. The attribute of reason is useless against him. That's a hell of an unfortunate situation. How stupid this creature is. After which he pounced on Royce. The twins went on the attack. They threw 2 punches at him. Kanu didn't like the fact that the skin of that creature was very hard. Even Connie's hands were aching. For some reason, Drake started screaming. Royce began to speculate that Drake was affected by the twins' electrical discharge attribute. He told Khan and Connie to attack again. The monster becomes vulnerable. They must use the electric discharge attribute and continue to attack. They accepted his command, after which they came forward. The twins hit him with an electric shock. Its anti-magic property fails to protect the internal organs. It seems he underestimated the twins' abilities. Though still young, they are still dragons. As is he. They're gonna fry that thing tonight. Meanwhile, Jacob and Favre were simply shocked to see such a battle. They're fighting Drake. So Jacob didn't understand who these kids were at all. Favre tells me that his nephews have a little bit of power. Jacob wondered if they were Favre's nephews. The man confessed that he couldn't tell everything or he would be beaten. Royce released his crystals again. They hit Drake. It was noticeable that they had almost overpowered him. Royce was pleased with the work he had done. Connie and Can were already tired. Their arms and legs were sore. Royce asked for a little more patience. The final blow remained to be struck. But what they didn't expect at all was that there would be another problem, namely another Drake. Why there are two Drakes in the same place? And why did it happen to them? These were the kinds of questions that were on the main character's mind. Green Drake was injured. Connie asked Royce what they should do now. There was no way out. Of course, he doesn't want to show Jacob his true nature. It would be better if he and the favored man left the place. Only Royce wanted to tell the twins his plan as they heard something again. Two thunder tigers appeared there. Drake immediately turned his attention to them. They attacked Drake and started biting him. And the tiger cub was happy to see them. Jacob hadn't expected to see two more thunder tigers here either. The cub was in danger, so his parents came running to his aid. Connie was excited to see the big kitties. And Khan was interested in the silver color of these cats. Drake started to get up. Royce noticed this, so he used the attribute time to restrain Drake. There's no way they're gonna miss this Drake guy. Now he's definitely finished. Royce called Favre over to him. The one immediately ran to the Lord with his weapon. Once again, Jacob was left only to watch the whole thing. What a gentleman. Favre said those children were his nephews. Afterward, an adult thunder tiger attacked Drake. Drake bit him. After which he flung the tiger away from him. The tiger was wounded but tried to get up. Drake began to let out a roar. This thunder tiger's power caused it to start coughing up blood. And after that, he was preparing to finish the game with his tail. Seeing this, the other tiger immediately rushed over to cover the pair with his own body. The impact caused him to be thrown back against a tree. The thunder tiger also started coughing up blood, after which the tiger fell to the snow. She became enraged as soon as she saw the death of the one who had protected her. Afterwards, she pounced on Drake again and bit him. Drake could do nothing against the thunder tiger's sharp teeth. And there was a cub watching the whole thing. Afterward, he turned his attention to the defeated Drake. The guys were glad it was finally over. It was hard. Favre informed the Lord that the thunder tiger was approaching. She was all scarred up. The tiger cub immediately ran up to his parent. He was glad she was okay. Afterward, the adult thundered tiger glared at Royce. You could even guess by the look on her face that she seemed to realize who these kids were. She left her cub and started to walk away. The tiger cub ran after her. However, Royce stopped him. Glancing at her cub, she gave one last smile. The adult then jumped straight to where Drake and another tiger had been killed. The baby cried after his parents. Finn, this thundering tiger, seemed ready to die. She risked her life just to protect her own child, a true leader. After which a bright glow appeared there. Finn knew what that light meant. Royce took her off his shoulder and asked her to watch the boys. The fairy asked the young gentleman where he was going. Royce wanted to go all the way to the mountain, but it could be dangerous out there. Royce reported that he would be right back, so there was no need to worry. Finn asked that the young master be careful. Afterward, the protagonist noticed the tiger cub crouching down. Once Royce inquired if he wanted the boy to sit on him, the cub nodded, so he agreed to take the tiger cub along with him. After Royce got on the tiger, they ran to the place. This little guy is too fast. The protagonist didn't understand how the twins could even catch him. After which they came running toward the bloody spectacle. So the thunder tiger really did die. The baby approached her parent and began to mourn her death. Royce realized that the cub had lost its parents, just like he had in his previous life. He decided to silently comfort this cub by stroking its head. They made makeshift graves for the adults. The tiger cub was still mourning his parents. Royce now realized how the Troughton family had met the thunder tiger. Drake and thunder tiger lived on the same mountain, so a battle for territory was impossible to avoid. Even if they didn't interfere, the two monsters would have destroyed each other anyway, after which Jacob would harbor a baby thunder tiger. However, Royce can't allow that to happen. He used his power on the cub. In this way, Royce made the tiger cub look tigerish to himself. As soon as the tiger turned back, he felt the dragon's terrifying aura. It made his body shake. However, the tiger cub has nothing more to fear. If he trusts Royce, he will take care of him. The boy held out his hand to him and asked him if the tiger cub would go with him. The tiger cub put his paw in his hand. It was noticeable that they had already found common ground. Afterward, he heard Jacob, Favre, and the twins come in, wondering what Royce was doing there. Jacob noticed that this boy had just used obedience. It was a skill that only highly ranked druids possessed, although the tiger is still quite a baby. It is not at all easy to achieve the complete obedience of a spiritual wild beast. Now he was beginning to guess who these kids were. Royce also felt bad that it was your man who may have guessed who they really were. However, Jacob began to claim that he was the High Elf. Not at all the kind of answer the guy expected to hear. It's a huge part of meeting the guardian of the forest. And it turns out he was able to hide his ears with magic. Royce began to explain that there had been a misunderstanding. But it was only then that he realized he should even be grateful to Jacob. After all, he's got it all wrong, which means Royce's essence remains a mystery to him. Royce stated confidently that he was the guardian of the forest, namely the High Elf. Now Favre was wondering what he was up to this time. Jacob apologized for not acknowledging him earlier, but Royce replied that it was okay. Khan asked his sister if elves always act so arrogant. But Connie doesn't know that. She even assumed that Royce had never met them himself. In that case, these twins are also elves. The protagonist revealed that it was the elven warriors who accompanied him. Favre was beginning to think this was none of his business. It wasn't the first day he'd been with them. The twins were angry at Royce's words, and Royce had a request for this man. The request was for him to take care of this little one. Jacob couldn't believe they were going to give him a baby thunder tiger to raise. But the twins began to protest, for the Nabi now belonged to them. After which he glanced at Favre. Favre immediately realized what Royce was about to ask him. He took the twins from there. The twins didn't want to give Nabi to some druid, and even yelled about hating Royce. Royce again inquired if he would take the cub to him. Jacob knew that this cub would only obey the High Elf. The guy shared that he had to use obedience out of compassion. This journey will be difficult. Therefore, he wasn't sure if the baby tiger could even survive. Jacob understood now. So they all had a long journey ahead of them. He saw Jacob as someone who could surely take care of the tiger. So he asked if the man could look after the tiger until Royce came one day. Jacob replied that the High Elf could count on him. He would take care of the tiger cub, as if it were his own child. In that case, he entrusts the cub to Jacob. Royce told the tiger cub that from now on, he would have to follow the man. But it was noticeable that he was upset. Royce petted him, indicating that he couldn't take him with him at the moment. But let him obey Jacob. Royce would be back for him soon. The tiger cub cheered up a little. Afterward, he walked over to Jacob. Jacob hopes he can get along with the Nabi. That's enough. Since he has an agreement with this tiger, he will not be its enemy in the future. Royce also asked that Jacob feed the tiger cub the speed attribute stones. Pretty soon this little guy's gonna be big, and Jacob better take Jacob's word for it. Nabi and Jacob said their goodbyes, after which they headed off. It would be difficult, but Royce was glad that things had worked out well. If there are no dragons here, the situation could become very difficult in the future. But for now, he is happy with the current result. And now they must continue westward. However, Royce then noticed that the twins were resentful of him. Khan said he hates Royce. Connie wasn't happy either, because he just took the Nabi and gave it away, so the twins would not play with him anymore. Royce decided to bribe them somehow, and they couldn't resist such a treat. Connie asked to be given 2 pieces, and Khan wanted 3. At last they arrived at the entrance to the town of Lufthagen Harbor. Kang noticed that there were a lot of people here. Someone was looking at the boy with some awkwardness, and Connie notices a girl cat she's seeing for the first time. This place is very different from the villages they have been to before. In the port city of Lufthagen, they will see many new things. It is said that this place is bustling with life all year round. This place is the main port between the fall and winter continents. They are now in place. It took 6 months to get to the Kesh Tower mountain to the town of Lufthagen. They had almost traveled half of the halfway point. Royce wanted to go home as soon as possible. It really annoyed him how those twins kept pestering him whenever they saw something new. That's why he got into a fight with them. He told them to stay out of the way. He told them to keep their distance. And the boys were having fun because Royce was angry. The minion told the master they were in position. They immediately stopped fighting. A building opened up in front of Royce with a sign that had a name written on it. Siren's Shelter. Royce didn't believe that the place Favre was talking about was just a dilapidated inn. In fact, the man had last been here 10 years ago. First, they must go inside. As soon as they entered, they were greeted by a woman carrying mugs of booze. The girl asked if they wanted to stay overnight or just have lunch here. Favre explained that they would like to stay for a while. It was only then that she recognized Uncle Favre. The man himself didn't realize how she knew him. The girl introduced herself as Moana. I wonder if Favre had already forgotten her. He himself didn't recognize the little Moana at first. But what little girl are we talking about when she's already 24 years old? Moana called Lucia. Let her see who had come here. Lucia came out, wondering who it was who had pleased her so much by his coming. And that's when he recognized Uncle Favre. Favre noticed that Lucia, too, had become so mature and beautiful that it was time to marry her. Moana also inquired about her. Favre also replied that she had become very beautiful. Now Royce saw that the man had indeed visited this place often. He wondered where Harmon and Julia were. They must have gone to the market. As it turns out, their parents died 3 years ago. They were beaten by a wagon. He couldn't believe Harmon and Julia were dead. Favre apologized for arriving too late, but the girls replied that it was okay. They had gotten the place, so they didn't need anything. They had a hard time, but they held on to the end. So Favre praised them for that. Lucia wondered who was there with him. It didn't seem to be Favre's children, but isn't it obvious what kind of children he could have? Moana didn't understand where all his confidence had gone. Favre revealed that these children are his nephews, but of course they didn't believe him. How could such beautiful children be his relatives? Favre began to explain that they were very distant relatives. Joining the twins was Moana. These guys were so beautiful that her heart even jumped out of her chest. She immediately hugged the twins for they were so cute. It was obvious that the boys were enjoying it. All Royce could think was that if she babysat these walking troubles, her opinion would change. Afterward, Lucia came over to Royce. She asked if the boy was hungry. The protagonist replied that he was a little hungry. Since these guys were hungry, they would make them something delicious right away. Moana asked Lucy if there was any meat left that they had bought. Lucy replied that yes, she would take care of the ingredients. Royce explained that too much cuteness gets boring quickly. Favre was silent. They were also assigned a room. It's been a long time since Royce had a full meal. He didn't even have time to ask Favre what his relationship was with those roosters. It felt as if they had known each other for a very long time. Favre explained that their parents were his workmates and friends. Royce guessed they were mercenaries too. They were fun guys. At the time, they spent time together every day, and one day, they fell in love. Soon they had a child. The boys quit their job as mercenaries and opened an inn. It was because of them that Favre became their regular guest. Royce now recognized the whole story and said that it was time for Favre to go. The man asked where exactly to go. He seemed to have forgotten that he needed to find a boat to the Fall Continent. Besides, he still needed to buy elixirs, but they just got here. Seeing Royce's angry expression, he immediately ran to do his errands. Afterward, Royce told Finn to follow him. He also glanced at the twins, who were already asleep. Apparently, they've gotten pretty tired on this trip. Asleep. These guys are like real angels. He should get some sleep too. That's where Moana came in, bringing dessert for the boys. But Lucia noticed that her sister was becoming, so she wondered why she wasn't coming in. Then they saw that the children were asleep. Moana thought they were incredibly cute, and Lucia thought they were also beautiful. The girls wished these babies good night and sweet dreams. There were a small number of customers in the inn. From the second floor came Royce, who was yawning. Lucia asked the boy if he had gotten a good night's sleep that night. The protagonist replied that he had. The girl told him to sit down and wait for her to bring breakfast. The twins cheerfully motioned for Royce to sit down next to them and eat. Royce immediately asked Favre if he had found the boat that would take them to the Fall Continent. Sure enough, he was able to do so. Favre reported that they would depart in 2 weeks. This is joyous news. Afterward, the guy asked what about the elixirs. Even though they are commodities, getting them will be a bit of a problem. It came out just as he thought it would. Being a dragon, the food has to match. So Royce needs to eat things that ordinary people might not see in a lifetime. Yes, human food will taste better. However, it will not help newborns. It will take them 2 months to reach the Fall Continent. It is necessary to stock up before they set sail. Favre asked the boy not to worry, for he would surely get everything. After all, they are in the port city of Luftenhagen. In that case, they'll go together tomorrow. After which, a chicken was placed in front of them. It was Moana and Lucia who said the food was ready. Let them eat slowly. Favre didn't even realize who ate that much in the morning. Moana replied that breakfast wasn't primarily for him, but for the kids, and Lucia offered the twins something to eat. They didn't mind. It's not like Favre said he wouldn't eat. He immediately felt that it was cooked properly. It tasted like Moana's mother. It was only natural since she was her daughter. Besides, Lucia had helped her. But Lucia thought she was just standing there. Favre asked Lucia if she was singing as well as she had in the past. Fair didn't even expect that she could sing. Favre thought Lucia was the best at it in all of Luftenhagen. When Lucia started to sing, the inn was always crowded. It was not for nothing that the inn was called a siren's haven. People were even crowding the street. Royce noticed that for the girls, the topic was not a pleasant one to discuss. It was as if something had happened, so he slapped Favre on the back. The men did not understand why he had been hit, but then he saw that Moana and Lucia had fallen silent. Moana reported with sadness on her face that Lucia was no longer singing. Or rather, she couldn't do it. Favre wondered what had happened. She had talent. And only Moana wanted to tell about this situation as someone came into the inn. It was a small group of men who were dressed like bandits. Royce even wondered what the boogames were. He heard the visitors' words that a local star had arrived. He didn't seem to be bothered by it at all. They approached the girls. These people annoyed Favre, for they apparently did not realize where they had come. But then another man came in and told everyone to get out of his way. It was a blonde man. He wished Lady Moana good morning, and for Lady Lucia he presented flowers. Lady Lucia looks charming today. Royce was even disgusted by it. It gave him goosebumps. Turns out this man's name is Carrie, and she did say last time, but he didn't want to hear unnecessary words. And today, just looking at Lucia calmed his heart. He should now take his leave. Carrie also wished him a beautiful day, but of course he honored Royce with a glance. At first they looked at each other in silence, but then you could see the sneer on Carrie's face. Of course, Royce couldn't swallow that resentment. The man looks down on him. He turned to Lucia and also called her sis, mentioning that he wanted to sleep. The boy asked for her to hold him. Lucia inquired if she should lull him to sleep. Of course, he said yes. Favre didn't understand at all what was wrong with the young master's behavior. She picked him up in her arms and wanted to carry him to his room. Royce was pleased that he was able to bring out his jealousy. Carrie was not happy, however. He told his men they were coming back. That man just got the wrong guy. Let him bite it out. Favre inquired as to who this guy even was. Moana revealed that it was Carrie, who is the oldest son of the Vaunt family. Favre immediately thought of the Vaunt family. He even asked if the head of the family was the same Vaunt fighter. That's exactly what it was. Even though Carrie's father is now a baron. What kind of nonsense is this? When did Juan become a baron? Barona Want started out as the head of an underground organization. However, he was knighted for managing to unite the underworld of Luftenhagen, thus stabilizing the port. That bastard kept talking about becoming a nobleman. He's made it after all. And it seems his son is in love with Lucia. Why doesn't Moana advise her sister to be a little nicer to him? Moana advised him not to even talk about something like that again, but Favre didn't understand why. Carrie is a nobleman, and he has manners. In fact, this boy is 14 years old, and Lucia is 22. Even the man didn't expect this, that this brat is only 14 years old. So young, and already he's acting like a man. It's not even a pity to marry Lucia for such a brave man. Moana wasn't happy with her uncle. After all, time flies fast. Favre has a lot of things to do, so he'll go. Then he went into Royce in the twins' room. Favre found out about all the shops that sold elixirs. In that case, they should go there immediately. The twins wondered where Royce was going. They wanted to go with him, but the boy replied that he and Favre were going on business, and they should rest here. But they didn't want to stay here by themselves. The twins really wanted to go with Royce. Moana and Lucia came in and heard that they were going somewhere. Did the children really want to keep walking around in their clothes? They'd better change. A few minutes later, they changed their clothes. These guys looked good in every way. Their clothes looked very light, so in a hurry the girls prepared new warmer clothes. It was so good that it fit them. Connie thanked them for it. Moana was not happy that this uncle dared to dress his nephews in such thin clothes in this weather. He's a bad uncle. But really, that wasn't even the point. They are dragons after all, so the weather doesn't matter to them. Royce thanked him for such a gift, and also told him that they would wear their clothes carefully. Lucia, on the other hand, called him a little prince. Moana and Lucia have agreed to look after the twins, so they don't have to worry. Royce said that they would be back soon. The protagonist asked the man if he was sure they could buy the elixirs. Favre asked him to trust him. In that case, he won't be worried. It was still morning when they moved out, but now it was dusk. There really wasn't a single place here that sold elixirs. It's a port city. Everything has to be sold here. Favre apologized. He really didn't know it would turn out like this. Now that's a real problem. Will they go down in history as newborn dragons who died of starvation? Suddenly they heard some noise, so they paid attention to it. There was the same kid who came to the siren's shelter. So what's he doing there? Didn't he warn Carrie to back off Lucia? Does he really think she'd look at a brat like that? Especially with a real man walking beside her. He even asked his boys if he was settling on his assumption. Of course, they supported their boss, saying that Lucia was too good for this boy. They couldn't have heard such nasty words about their master. Those bastards know who they're dealing with. But if they still don't hesitate in their language, he must realize that if they raise a sword on him, they will declare war on the Damon clan. His men took up arms. Those bastards are really crazy. They're clearly out of their minds. Do these guys really think they're going to survive after Carrie's father finds out about this? He doesn't even know. Well, he's a commoner anyway. Maybe the noble boy will tell him all about it. That's where Favre intervened and told them to stop all this. He doesn't know what they have going on here. But shame on them to bear their swords in broad daylight. He recognized these guys, for they were in the siren's shelter. He told the man to mind his own business. He'd better go where he's going. It's been 10 years since he left this place, and now no one recognizes old Favre. Of course they had heard of Favre. Could this be the very Favre of the bloody axe? He was even surprised someone still remembered him. Curry wondered what kind of bloody axe that was. The lad must surely have heard of this man, for he was the one who had once saved the Baron. Even before he was knighted, the Baron waged wars to unite the underworld. He fell into a trap set by his enemies. At that moment, the Baron's life literally hung in the balance. Favre came into enemy territory with only an axe and received 8 blows with his sword. But still, he managed to save the Baron. So this is the man who saved his father's life. He didn't even think they would meet Favre like this. Carrie had heard a lot of things about him from his father, so he read it as an honor to meet him. But Favre thought it was all so long ago, so he didn't understand why he had to make a big deal out of it. Royce had noticed that the man was very fond of showing off. Even he didn't think he would meet a legendary figure that he had only heard rumors about. He was pleased to meet him, and this man's name is Damon. He owns a small business in this town. Royce noticed the strange aura that dwelled around the man. It was an aura that made him uneasy. He also noticed that Favre was familiar with the young master. After that, Damon bowed, indicating that it was time for them to leave. He wished them a good day. Favre didn't even expect this man to just pick up and walk out of here. Quite an interesting man. It seems his suspicions were not in vain. This man is about to do something terrible. Von Manor. He was glad to see Favre. The guys hugged. After all, it had been about 10 years since the last meeting. The Baron was disappointed in him, for he had hoped they would keep in touch. Favre apologized for that. His life was hectic. He never thought the Baron would actually accomplish all of this. Favre had never hoped he would live to see this moment, and it was all thanks to Favre. The man wouldn't be standing here if he hadn't been rescued that fateful day. Favre didn't mind chatting with his old friend some more, but then he noticed the look in Royce's eyes. Favre reported that he didn't come here for nothing. In fact, Carrie has already told him everything. Favre is looking for potions. He had already given orders to his men. In a few days, Favre would have enough potions. Royce noticed that the Baron had some kind of problems with other organizations, so the boy asked if he was sure he would be able to get the elixirs. Raven inquired about the boy. Favre introduced Royce as his nephew. This boy is a little short on manners, so he hopes for understanding. In fact, Damon's clan has been giving him quite a bit of trouble lately. It was hard for a commoner to compete with the aristocracy. Favre wondered what had happened between them. Lately, there have been constant unexplained shipwrecks of merchant council ships that are under the protection of the Damon clan. It could all be written off as bad luck. However, there are rumors of this monster attacking ships. In that vein, people would wonder if the Baron would also be unable to protect his customers. After the incident, Damon, whom the Baron considered his ally, began to turn against him. It might be worth asking the Lord for help in dealing with the situation. After all, he is the one who gave him the title of Baron. But he doesn't think my lord cares who runs things, as long as the city runs smoothly. He was once a commoner himself, so he's sure my lord won't mind if Damon decides to take his place. It really is a headache, but it's been so long since they've seen each other so they can't talk about nonsense. He'll take care of Favre. Tonight they'll party all night long. Favre wouldn't mind having some fun. However, he glanced at the sullen young gentleman. In the end, the hero had no choice but to let him go. For the sake of free elixir, you can let this man have a little fun. He was very happy with the decision. They'll drink until their noses bleed. The Baron thought it was a great idea. Also, the Baron asked that Carrie keep an eye on Royce, but of course, none of them wanted to sit with each other. Carrie told the brat to follow him. Royce asked where they were going. Dad said to play with the little brat, so they're going to his room. In that case, he told Carrie to lead him. Royce was very interested to see how he would be entertained by the scion of a noble family. Carrie was pissed off at the lad's behavior. Afterward, they came to Carrie's room. Let him move wherever he wants. Just make sure he doesn't touch any of Carrie's stuff without asking. Royce, however, wasn't listening to him at all. He said not to touch anything. The kid's gonna break it. The main character has noticed that he pretends to be an adult, but in reality is still a child. I wonder if he's still playing with toys. But who's to say? These knight figures are limited edition, so you need to be as careful as possible with them. Whereupon Royce noticed the letter. My Lady Lucia, this necklace is as beautiful as your eyes. And that's what Royce read. He didn't understand at all why this kid was touching everything without permission. The protagonist himself noticed that this was the necklace. The guy opened the box. There was a beautiful necklace with a huge blue stone. Carrie took that box right away. This guy's writing is disgusting, but the jewelry is refined quite well. Lucia will definitely like it. He immediately rejoiced when he heard those words. Carrie had a hard time getting that jewelry, even though it looks expensive. Is it a problem for Carrie to get something like that? The blonde replied that this necklace was different from other expensive trinkets. This piece of jewelry is none other than the famous siren's tear. He didn't pay attention to that necklace at first, but then he realized that it was indeed the same siren's tear. Royce immediately asked if the necklace was real. Carrie replied that it had been authenticated by one of the best experts. The boy didn't understand how he could have the necklace. According to the story, there is a legend about a lord of the sea who loved his daughter very much. He placed her last tear in the jewel, which later became the decoration of the siren's tear. All that matters is that this necklace is the key to the underwater labyrinth of the sea monster. The underwater maze of the sea monster is an important place to level up the main characters of the comic book. Therefore, Royce must get this key at any cost. He even called Carrie his big brother. At first, the blonde thought he'd just heard him. Royce tried to make a very cute face and asked if he could give the jewelry to him. Of course it didn't work on him, and he thought the brat was sick. He started demanding that this little brother give him the jewelry. Carrie didn't understand what was wrong with this guy at all. Let him stay away from him. You could hear them screaming in the manor. Carrie demanded that the man get away from him. Let her not even dream of it. It's a gift for Lady Lucia. It didn't work out for him after all. But what will he do if Lucia doesn't accept the gift? Carrie thought that was impossible. They say that girls are willing to die for expensive gifts. His guards said the same thing. There are certainly girls like that out there. But did he really think Lucia would accept such an expensive gift? He was unsure of his decision. That wouldn't do. Royce decided to tell him about the real relationship. All the while Carrie was taking notes. First of all, you need to establish mutual understanding with the girl and only then confess your feelings. And it is necessary to avoid sudden recognitions, as well as not to overwhelm the girl with gifts. He doesn't want to burden his beloved. It turns out he did everything he didn't need to do. If he needs relationship advice, he's the right choice. I know. Why would they ask anyone? Royce wondered why he liked Lucia so much. If there was a reason, he met Lucia 5 years ago. He saw her then singing in the siren's shelter. At that moment, it was as if his unenlightened future had been illuminated by a ray of sunshine. Her gestures, her beautiful smile, and her singing. All of this made me instantly fall in love with her. Long story short, he fell in love with her when she sang. But he didn't think it was just singing. Lady Lucia's singing was like heavenly harmony. The guy wondered why she wasn't doing it now if she sings so well. As it turns out, there was an accident. 4 years ago, Lucia had a favorite singer who was giving a concert in town. Naturally, Lucia persuaded her parents to go there. They went to the concert. However, there was an incident on the way. Of course, the parents didn't want to sacrifice their child. Once she regained consciousness, she saw the bodies of her parents. She just couldn't believe her eyes or think clearly. Lucia's parents were killed under the wheels of a carriage, and Lucia herself was no longer able to sing because of her injuries. It makes sense now what happened then. Most likely, she blames herself for the death of her parents, so she refuses to sing. If you do it right, he can do a good deed and get the siren's tear. Is he really going to give that piece of jewelry to Lucia, knowing the story? He must be out of his mind. It's like giving a siren who can't sing a piece of jewelry like that. Lucia will surely remember the terrible past as soon as she sees this gift. He didn't even think about it. Royce only sighed in disappointment. Carrie had to be taught everything after all. The kid has an offer that is sure to interest him. A little later, he returned to the inn. Moana asked why he was alone and where his uncle had gone. Royce relayed Favre's words about staying to drink with Uncle Terrius. Moana was angry that he had dared to send the child alone so late, but he's fine. The boy also asked where his sister Lucia was. He seems to have missed her. Lucia's in her room. He thanked for that information and decided to go up to the second floor. Moana said she would bring some goodies soon. It's time to start executing your plan. If Royce could make Lucia sing again, then Carrie would give him the necklace. But the blonde thought that was impossible. But why would he think that way? Carrie wants to see her sing again. It really is. He couldn't possibly care more about some bling than Lucia's little sister. Carrie began to argue that of course not. He wouldn't give up even the most precious thing he had to make her sing again. The boy was at once delighted at these words and inquired if they had agreed. At first, Carrie didn't know how best to proceed. Royce was even more disappointed that this guy was still thinking. He'd said he was ready to give her the whole world, but in reality, it was just the babble of an immature child. He couldn't bear to hear those words anymore, so he agreed. If Royce succeeded, the siren's tear would belong to him. To seal the deal, they have to shake hands, but Royce must realize he only has one chance. The protagonist knocked on Lucia's room. The door was opened in front of him by a girl who was glad to see him. She didn't even know when Royce had returned. The boy reported just now, surgery's about to begin. Royce was bored, so he wanted Lucia to play with him. Of course, she didn't mind playing with this boy. But first he must enter her room. Royce looked around and saw that Lucia had a rather nice and cozy room. She thanked him for that compliment. But even so, she hadn't really worked hard on the look of this room. But it was nice to hear such words. He noticed a musical instrument standing in the corner. The protagonist inquired as to what it was. This musical instrument is called a bahun, a thing that is used to make music. Royce really wanted to hear the music, so he asked Lucia to play. He really asked for it to be done. Lucia gave up and decided to play a little for him. It may have been difficult for her, but she played divinely. The music was very much to Royce's liking. The Lucia itself is very beautiful, and the sound that comes from the instrument is mesmerizing. No wonder why Carrie fell in love with her. After that, she stopped playing. Roy immediately stood up and started clapping. But Lucia didn't think she had done as well as she first thought. It was because she hadn't played in a long time. But Royce didn't even realize what she was talking about. It was just a great game. Lucia agreed, if he thought so. The main character stated that he wanted to learn how to play too. Lucia couldn't even believe he was talking about Bahyun right now. The boy nodded happily, confirming everything she had just said. He was eager to learn to play as beautifully as his little sister. In that case, he needs to wait a little longer. She definitely remembered that he was around here somewhere. Royce wondered what she was looking for. She finally found little Bahyun, whereupon the girl drew the musical instrument to Royce, and the latter inquired what it was. Lucia called it a gift. It's the Bahyun she used to play on as a child. It will fit the boy's size perfectly. Royce thanked her for the gift. He would use the instrument with care. Since it was too late today, she decided to start practicing from tomorrow. And Royce didn't mind. Royce wished her good night. Lucia wished him the same. He then came into the room and began to look at the instrument. Finn learned of a plan in which Royce wanted to help Lucia get over her music-related trauma by creating beautiful new memories. But wouldn't it have been faster to just use it? Requires the mind to manipulate her memories. But the guy knew that it would only be a temporary solution to the problem. Moreover, he doesn't want Lucia to remember everything one day and start suffering again. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that's his motto in life. Lucia has been good to him, so Royce should return the favor. She only sighed. Once again, they were off schedule. But Royce asked, believing it won't happen again. 3 days later, the boy finished playing, and at the same time Lucia was silent. Royce asked how he was doing, and if she liked the game. Lucia replied that he was good at it. That's why he's good. But in her mind, the girl was only thinking that this little guy was definitely a genius. It's only been a few days and he's already memorized all the chords. Where'd he learn to do a performance like that? Today he played something that not even every adult can do. She didn't understand at all where this boy had even come from. Royce asked that his little sister teach him a different tune today. I'm not sure, but she agreed. There was a notice on the wall that they were looking for participants for their annual Cane Night. Damon ripped off this announcement by talking about Kainu Night. There's singing songs in there. The subordinate said that this is one of the events of the annual festival. It is considered the most popular in terms of attendance. Because of this, the prize for winning the competition is very generous. The participants start rehearsing long before the festival starts. Now that's pretty interesting. The man wondered what their boss was talking about. The more people, the more debt. The bigger the crowd, the louder the screams would be. You could tell by the look on his face that the man was up to something. Meanwhile, Favre was finally on his way back to the inn. He really did feel as if he were going to die. He must have gotten old by now. Favre doesn't even remember being this hard. After a few days of non-stop drinking, suddenly he heard someone playing the bahoon. He ran into the inn at once, for he thought Lucia had begun to sing again. Well then, he saw the young gentleman in front of him, who was displeased that Favre had only just returned. Royce felt the stench of booze on his breath. I wondered if he'd been drinking with Tyrius all night last night again. Favre began to explain himself, talking about how the Baron didn't want to let him go. He also wondered why Royce had a bahoon. He had never seen the boy play musical instruments. Royce proudly stated that this instrument was given to him by Lucia. But even so, his playing didn't sound like that of a beginner. Therefore, the man assumed that he had played this instrument before. But the protagonist said that he started learning it yesterday, and he had never encountered this instrument before. I just couldn't believe my ears. Does this boy mean to say that he learned to play like that in less than a week? Royce started bragging about the fact that this was indeed the case. Favre thought he was an upstart. He also mentioned that drinking was good, of course, but he hoped Favre hadn't forgotten his job. The one replied that one could take it easy. They are scouring the entire Luftenhagen city for elixirs. Thanks to the Baron, they were able to find 20 of the lowest grade already. It was not for nothing that the young master trusted him, but Royce was disappointed that these were only low-grade elixirs. Is he really bragging about such a result? Moreover, Favre would only be able to become 20 pieces. He had to work very hard to achieve such a result. It was almost impossible to get elixir here lately. There's no way elixirs are rare in a port city. That sounds like the ravings of a madman. Royce asked if there was a place in this city where magical creatures were raised. Favre replied that there wasn't. As far as he knew, there was no such place, but he wondered why the boy was asking about it. The main character felt as if someone was intentionally buying up elixirs in bulk. Elixirs are usually used by humans, or they are fed to a magical creature to enhance their abilities. Because of this, so that no one consumes them in large quantities, it doesn't make sense for anyone to buy up elixirs all the mind. But if someone is intentionally raising magical creatures, they need to buy elixirs on a regular basis. But if, as Royce suggested, someone was breeding monsters in the city, you can't be that the Baron wasn't aware of it. It's really weird. Does anyone manage to breed creatures and still go undetected? A disturbing thought popped into his head. Royce asked Favre if he could track down the people who bought the elixirs. Even if it took some time, it wouldn't be a problem for Therius. Royce wanted the man to contact him and find out who was buying the most elixirs. Once he finds the place where all the elixir comes from, have him send Finn there to help survey the place. Favre would do as the young lord said. He didn't understand why he wanted to do all this. Does he really want to take all the elixirs for himself? Royce asked if he thought the noble dragon was a common thief. Royce may not be sure yet, but he has a feeling that this daemon type might be a lot crazier than he first thought. For starters, Favre would go upstairs and lie down. But Royce clearly didn't want the man to do that. The guy demanded that he go find out right now. But Favre just got back and he's hungover. Royce had only let him relax for a little while, and he already thought he could do anything. Did he really want to go back to the good old days? In that case, he's on his way out. As soon as he wanted to leave Siren's shelter, he noticed that everyone was in a festive mood. Guy wondered who all these people were. Favre told him that the festival started today. Now the protagonist was curious to know what kind of festival it was. Now the town is known for its trade, but it used to be a small fishing village. Back then, people held a festival every year to pray for the safety and prosperity of those traveling by sea. The tradition has survived to this day, and the highlight of the festival is the Night of Cain. Favre explained that people who love and can sing gather from all over the city and then they compete to be the best singer. Lucia took first place every time. Royce cheerfully announced that Favre had another job. He should sign Royce up as a participant for Cain's night. Meanwhile, Lucia looked at her musical instrument silently and sadly. She heard Royce calling her name. The girl immediately came out to him and asked him if he had finished practicing already. The boy replied that he had, but he came to his little sister with a request. Lucia was curious to know what he wanted to ask. Since the festival had started there, he would like her to walk with him there. The twins were immediately hooked on the idea, because it sounded like fun. They wanted to go with him. Those little guys must have locators for ears. She was pleased to see the enthusiasm of the little ones. But they were right, for it would be very interesting. But what's to become of her now? The festival has brought many visitors to town, so they can't leave the place empty. Moana suggested we all go to the festival together. Since their lord and princess want to go there, of course they should accompany them to the festival. But Lucia didn't understand what they should do with the inn now. Moana replied that one weekend wouldn't ruin the inn. Besides, she was sure that most of the tourists hadn't even reached the city yet, so they would let themselves rest a bit today, and tomorrow they would start work. In that case, they should pack first before they go. She beckoned the boys to follow her. The twins were delighted. Connie asked if there would be a lot of goodies at the festival. Lucia replied that she would buy them whatever they wanted. Kang was happy about that. Everything is going exactly according to his plan, and now they'll move on to the next part. Meanwhile, Finn was busy with her work that the young master had assigned to her. She flew into the barrel. Looks like this is the building Favre was talking about. The merchant sold most of the elixir warehouses on the west side of town. He doesn't know what Mr. Royce is up to, but he thinks Finn should investigate the place. Whatever they're hiding, this loyal servant of Mr. Royce will find out everything. The fairy flew into the window of the building. In the middle of the room was a table and 2 boxes on which men sat and played cards. Finn came down with the help of a web. He had had enough of this. The man didn't understand at all how long they had to sit in this damp place. He's fed up with that whiner, so he should just shut his mouth and play. The boss said he'll contact them before the festival is over. Suddenly they heard some sound. Finn was also curious to know what that sound was. Could be a monster. Had he gone on another rampage? This time, it was the brown-haired man's turn to walk toward him. How much that thing eats. Afterward, Finn told the mouse to run over there. Because the mouse hit the man's legs, he fell, and all the contents fell out of the box. The man with white hair and only sighed and called him a useless idiot. He can't even do that properly. The fairy immediately recognized that they were elixirs. I wonder if all these boxes are filled with them. She has to find out why they're doing all this. A man with white hair started claiming that his partner was causing rats to show up because he was shitting here. She hid between the elixirs. Why is it his fault there's rodents in here too? That guy with the white hair, he never even cleaned the place. He's doing the same job as he acts like he's in charge. Looks like these stairs lead to the basement. But in fact, her conclusions turned out to be wrong. The man set down the box of elixirs, after which he left. But he also cast a glance into the darkness. It forced his body to live to tell the tale. After which, he immediately fled from that place. Meanwhile, Finn had snapped out of those elixirs, for she had no room to breathe. She also hoped that the man was gone. It was only then that she noticed the creature that approached her. What the hell is that thing? It was by no means a good and dangerous creature. Meanwhile, the child in the dragon costume started to scare the other children. The children started to run away because it was a dragon. The twins thought this festival was very interesting. They don't call it the best festival on the winter continent for nothing, and of course, they should now be in agreement with that. The scale of the festival is truly impressive. Even in his previous life, Royce had never attended an event like this. He thinks that this festival can be compared to the Everland Festival. Lucia held out a stick of food to him, and the boy asked what it was. The woman told him it was frozen fruit that you could only taste at the festival. She thought he would like it. As soon as he took a bite, he immediately realized that they had the same taste as the fruit in the glass from his world. Lucia wondered if it was the first time he had tasted something like this, and if it tasted good. The boy replied that it was really good. They heard the sound of bahyun. It looks like someone is playing that musical instrument. Lucia assumed that the selection of participants for Kane's night was underway. He thinks it will be fun there, so he pulls her hand so they can go there and see. There was a man on stage. Royce couldn't believe that everyone here was playing so badly. His ears were bleeding. It's actually a qualifying tournament. Only the true talents will be selected and perform on stage. He thinks Lucia plays 100 times better than all of them. But she only remained silent with a sullen face. After which he pulled her with him. She asked Royce to stop. They then approached a man who informed them that they had to sign up in advance for the qualifier. The boy asked to check carefully, for Royce and Lucia were to be recorded. He couldn't believe it was the same Lucia from the Siren's Shelter. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn to it, for it was indeed the same girl. But she's already stopped singing. The others heard about it too. They said it happened after the accident. She couldn't stand all this talk and wanted to run away. But she felt someone stop her. It was Royce who held her hand. The protagonist asked her not to worry because he would be the one singing and she should be the one playing the instrument. This was something she clearly hadn't expected. It was obvious that Lucia wasn't very confident in her abilities. The man advised that if they needed time to prepare, they could let the next participant go ahead. Suddenly, Royce ran out onto the stage and greeted the dear residents of Luftenhagen. Royce introduced himself and also told them that he had come from the Siren Asylum. They had to listen to the playing and her singing of people who are quite far from art. He felt very sorry for the audience. First, he must invite Lucia, who will be assisting him today, to the stage. After which Lucia took the stage. She wasn't feeling well. In a trembling voice, Lucia informed him that she would not be up to the task. In response, Royce asked for his little sister to give him a hand. The protagonist used the attribute of reason, trying to convince her that everything would be okay. Lucia didn't even realize what it had just been. She felt much better when she took Royce's hand. He winked at the woman, indicating that there was no need to worry, as they would make it work. She thanked this boy for his kind words. Lucia told Royce to start singing and she would adjust. The audience must be waiting. He's going to play a song for them right now. The audience didn't even expect that it was the boy, not Lucia, who would sing. He is cute, of course, but even the woman doubted his singing ability. As soon as the main character started singing, their opinion immediately changed. His voice was beautiful. It was the first time they had heard such an angelic voice. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I want to live with you for 500 years. Why do you reject me? It was a very sad song. The man was sad, but at the same time his chest was overflowing with feelings. Afterward, he showed his little sister that she should play now too. I want to live as well as others do. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I want to live 10,000 years. No more, no less. Whereupon the song ended. All the paper fell out of his hands. At first the audience was silent, but then they started clapping. Of course, Royce was pleased with this response. The audience asked for an encore. The boy thanked everyone. Now the people of this world know what troth is. At the same time, Lucia was disturbed by something. The boys returned to the inn. It's been a really hard day, and it's not easy to sing. Moana praised Royce, and also wondered where he had learned to sing so well. All the audience really couldn't take their eyes off him. Now the twins realized that Royce was the best. Lucia's tired, so she's going to rest. Of course, she was concerned about her sister's condition. Lucia lay silently on the bed in her room. Moana indicated that she was stopping by, but there was no response. She sat down on her sister's bed and asked her how her day was. Didn't she like it? Lucia really liked all of this. She was so happy to see Lucia on stage after all this time. Lucia asked her sister if she didn't hate her. Moana didn't understand why she should hate Lucia. She's the reason their parents died, but she couldn't hear such words from this lousy girl. How much longer does Moana have to keep saying that it's not Lucia's fault? The parents made the choice to protect the person they loved. Lucia is the dearest person to Moana, so don't even let her say anything like that again. Moana hugged her sister. She won't make Lucia sing. But if she gets on stage little by little like she did today, maybe one day she'll get back there. Lucia knows how beautiful her singing is. Meanwhile, Royce was eavesdropping on them. The first part of the plan has been successfully completed. After that, the guy went back into the room, and that's where he saw the injured Finn. He immediately ran up to the fairy, not realizing what had happened. And just when she wanted to talk about what happened in the warehouse, she immediately fainted. Royce asked as Finn came to her senses. Favre burst into that very warehouse with weapons. The men didn't even realize who it was or why he had come here. Favre wondered when all those elixirs had gone, but it turned out they were hidden here. The man with white hair asked what he meant. He had come here knowing what they were up to here, so they had better not fight back. Damon walked in there and asked to let the man go. He doesn't even know what Mr. Favre is doing here, but he thinks they'd better talk to clear up any misunderstandings. It's usually the bastards who want to talk to Devon, but this time, he'll make an exception. They start talking about what Damon needs all those elixirs for. Favre was very curious to know what the man was up to. However, the man claimed that he did not understand what he was talking about. All of these elixirs were legally purchased for export to the Autumn continent. It seems to him that Favre has gotten the wrong information. It turns out he wouldn't mind if Favre explored the warehouse. The man replied that he could do whatever he wanted. Of course, he went to the very door. He went downstairs. This is where fishing boats were built when Luftenhagen was a small village. Right now they're using this place to transport things. But Favre thinks it's a great place to hide something. For example, in the exact direction he threw the hammer. However, there was no response. Damon had said there was nothing here, hadn't he? Favre found that hard to believe. He should go there and see for himself. This man is much more persistent than he seemed on first meeting. But there really wasn't anything here. If Favre continues to give him trouble, Damon won't be idle. So he had no choice but to leave. Royce was already there waiting for him, asking his uncle what he was doing here. Mana's sister is already looking for him. Royce thought he was drinking somewhere again. Favre said he went to the basement, but there was nothing there. Apparently they already suspected something. Royce will solve the problem, so don't let him worry. Royce greeted the Uncle Damon he'd seen the other day. The man asked who he was. The main character introduced himself, and also said that he lives in a siren's shelter with Uncle Favre. This is the same boy he was talking about. He was on Kainu night then. So this is the same kid who performed at the festival with Lucia. He sings really well. It must have been hard to convince Lucia to go on stage. He's very good. Damon wondered if the boy wanted him to give him advice. Royce wondered what kind of advice he was talking about. If you accuse someone without evidence, you can accidentally get yourself killed, as happened to Lucia's parents. Favre couldn't understand what the damn bastard had just said. But Royce stopped him. His uncle is very simple, so he often acts indiscriminately. Royce will try to convince him. It's good that this guy understands, although it was unexpected. He also noticed something interesting. Royce wanted to ask his uncle something, and Damon inquired as to what he wanted to know. What's that rock behind his back? Damon didn't understand why he was asking that. That horn looks beautiful, so Royce wants one for himself. It's not something they can just give away. After which they left. Favre asked the Lord what they would do now. He thought it should be told to the Therius. But the protagonist was against it. If the Baron acts, war will break out in the city. Innocent people could die. What's more, Lucia is on the verge of returning to her old life. Originally, Royce was going to take more time to gradually bring her back to the stage. Now, however, the plan will have to be accelerated. This will be the loudest festival ever. He grabbed the man by the collar. How did such an always calm creature suddenly become enraged? Moreover, it was Favre. He was very curious to know what they were doing here. However, the subordinate and himself did not understand anything. They only have one excuse for everything. He then stabbed the man with a dagger, and he fell to the floor. Now Damon's gonna have to change his plans, but Damon hasn't tamed him yet. But the man has no more time to wait. Favre has obviously smelled something, so we must hurry. They'll release him just in time for Kane's night. The festivities promise to be quite interesting this year. Favre said he'd searched everywhere, but hadn't seen any sea monster. So he wasn't sure if Damon was really planning to do something tonight. Apparently, he'd decided he couldn't put it off any longer. His tail has been stepped on, and his target is a Therius. It seems Damon plans to unleash the monster at the festival, and then destroy it afterward, thereby causing any citizens and the government. This is the best time to impress the Lord. To do that, he must compose the monster to his will. So Favre thought Damon was a druid like Jacob. But Royce argued that he was not a druid. He did not feel the attribute of reason. However, that man has a pretty good thing going on. Sea dragon horn. As the name suggests, it was made from the horn of a sea dragon. It is said that if you tame a sea monster with this horn, you can control it. He doesn't know where Damon got such a treasure, but it's enough to power a sea monster. And if they could take away that horn, it would greatly speed up the journey to the Autumn continent. Favre began to suspect that his original goal was the treasure. In that case, he was sure Damon would start acting today. He ordered the Tauren to head to the harbor and keep an eye on the situation. The man wondered where the protagonist would go, and he's got some business to attend to. He walked away through the bustling streets of the city. That's also where the kid spotted Carrie peeking through the window. Royce asked the blonde man what he was doing here. He just wanted to wish you Lady Lucia good luck as she returned to the stage after a long time. That guy was too suspicious. It turns out he's not even completely empty-headed. Royce didn't know that sometimes he had good ideas. He's got just the right job for Carrie today. He wants the blonde to bring a lot of people to the festival. Carrie didn't understand what it was all for. The protagonist replied that he should just do it. It wouldn't even be difficult for him, right? The family members alone are enough to fill its space completely. That's a great attitude. They'll see each other a little later. He also asked me to prepare a bouquet of flowers on the way back. Carrie needs to score points in Lucia's heart. He didn't even realize what the expression meant. Lucia felt like there were too many people here. Way more than at Kane's night. It looked like Carrie had overdone it. She didn't even think she'd ever have a day like this again. If it weren't for Royce, she couldn't have imagined such a thing even in her dreams. And now the people the whole town is talking about are invited on stage. Royce and Lucia. The man asked for a round of applause. Old injuries were making themselves felt. She was approached by the main character and also took her hand. He asked for it to stop. No more trying to avoid painful memories. What would her parents say if they found out she stopped singing because of guilt? She didn't even know how Royce knew about it, after which he went to the stage. Lucia needs to think about what her parents would really want. She had to wonder what her parents would have wanted. Royce stood on the stage along with a musical instrument. The audience didn't even know he was singing alone tonight. Well, what about Lucia? He started playing. On a cold winter night, I fell asleep wrapped in a warm blanket. In my dream, I was walking through a field of white snow. It glistened like precious stones. I was walking and snow was falling from the sky. The snow was mixed with rain. He recognized it was the same dream song of a toddler. His parents had sung it to him often as a child. On Cain's night, they sang the song that no one knows. But today they sing the one that everyone knows. It was so nice to hear the song performed by him. This boy's voice is enchanting. In the dark forest, I heard a terrible sound. A monster with white fur was chasing me. I'm scared, Mom, Dad. Save me. It awakened a memory in Lucia, what her parents would have wanted. After which she also took the stage. I looked at my beautiful baby sleeping under the blanket. My baby's crying. He's having a bad dream. It's okay. We're right here. Daddy's gonna axe the monster. It's okay, baby. We're here for you. Mommy will give you a big hug. Even Moana hadn't expected it. Tears came to her eyes. Then Royce asked Moana for the song their parents had often sung to them when they were children. But she didn't understand why he would do that. He'd like to sing this song for someone. It turns out he was asking for just such a moment. She mentally thanked Royce, our beloved little one. We will always be there for you until the sun shines and the snow melts. Whereupon the song ended. Carrie was the first to start crying and clapping his hands. This performance struck him to the core. Afterward, onlookers shouted for the siren to return. You could tell from her facial expression that Lucia was pleased as well. She thanked everyone for their kind words. Now Royce has dealt with one moment, and it's time for the next one. The main thing is not to spoil the party atmosphere. Meanwhile, Damon docked at the harbor in a small boat. He was met by a man who inquired where he was running to. It was Favre, who thought Damona had hidden something tasty like a rat. That man is so much like his friends. Lucia's parents did the same thing. Favre wondered what it was all about. Why he was suddenly talking about his friends. They, like Favre, followed him until they were killed in an accident. Now the man was beginning to guess that the incident had been Damon's doing. But who knows about that? Damon can't speak for others. However, he really dislikes those who get in his way. Favre lunged at the bastard in a rage. However, Damon was able to use his two blades to block the hammer blow. Did he really think that in fighting Terius, Damon wouldn't take every opportunity he could get? After that, Favre was rounded up. Also, Damon advised him not to worry about his siren friend's daughters. He'll take good care of them. Favre wished the bastard dead. At the same time, he shouted to the others to get out of his way. Meanwhile, Damon pulled out a sea monster horn. They angrily. He heard the voice of the main character talking about how he seemed to have the wrong address. The festival is that way, isn't it? It sounded like Damon was lost. Damon only mentioned that if this kid was walking around late at night alone, he would be punished. Royce was even thankful for the experience. In their family, however, everyone trusts each other. It's not like Royce was even going to overdo it, but Damon seemed to be the one who'd made his little sister Lucia suffer. And for that, he wouldn't forgive the man. That brat's too arrogant. He won't spare him just because he's a kid. But that's what Royce was counting on, because he wasn't going to give him a head start just because he was an old man. Damon immediately attacked the guy, but suddenly his blades hit the barrier. He immediately guessed that the boy in front of him was a mage, for he possessed the attribute of reason. Damon's too talkative. Let him attack already. Or perhaps the protagonist should start one himself. Royce threw him a pretty solid punch, which Damon tried to defend against. Even if he was able to block the blow a bit, he was still thrown back against the wall. Royce was surprised that he was even able to block his punch. He's much better than Favre. Meanwhile, a man asked what they were doing during the fight. Suddenly, he noticed a shadow looming over him. It was a sea monster that was preparing to attack the boys. Luckily, he was able to bounce back in time. That monster scared him. If Royce hadn't reacted, he would have been finished. Afterward, the sea monster crawled over to Damon. This little one's pretty good, but it's over. It happened a little sooner than Damon had planned, but there's no choice. He has to deal with this little brat. He blew the horn. Royce had already prepared to defend himself. However, nothing happened. He punched the stupid fish, asking about the fact that he wasn't going to attack. It's clear now, Damon hasn't been able to tame him completely. In that case, Royce would direct his attack in the opposite direction. He used the attribute of reason, influence, whereupon the protagonist ordered her to capture this man. It was noticeable that the sea monster was preparing to carry out the order, so Damon blew the horn and blew it again. The beast didn't know who he was supposed to obey. He thumped his tail, causing Royce to jump up. Royce isn't high enough to overcome the effects of the sea horn, but at the same time he can't let the monster get into the city, and defeating this monster is out of his hands. What's he gonna do now? He glanced back. An idea popped into his head. It could work. He turned to the sea worm. They need to fight properly. Whereupon the guy jumped up and dived into the water. Favre clearly did not expect such a decision from the Lord. Of course, the sea monster followed him. He thought the brat was an idiot. Royce decided to fight the sea monster in its natural habitat. That's reckless. The sea monster swam after Royce. Let him attack. He's ready. The beast prepared to swallow the boy, after which he closed his mouth. But strength began to break through his teeth. Royce turned to his dragon form. Once in the water, he can reincarnate as a dragon and have no fear of anyone getting hurt. And this sea worm's breath stinks. You have to brush your teeth 3 times a day. That punch definitely made him hurt. That worm must have thought the whole world belonged to him. But today he met the true king. After that, Royce's punch went over his head, and the little dragon didn't even think about slowing down. The sea monster decided to swim away. Of course, Royce wasn't thinking of letting him go, and all the fun is just beginning. Does he really regret being drafted? He wanted to play some more. Favre finished at his place too. He wondered how the Lord was doing. He was a dragon, but fighting in the water wasn't the same. Afterward, he noticed the whirlpool. What it's all about. It was a sea monster. He didn't even realize why the sea monster was in the sky. And that monster fell right on top of Damon. The man tried to run away. He tripped over a rock and fell, after which the sea monster nailed him, and the seahorn fell out of his hands. Favre was shocked by the whole spectacle. After that, something else began to emerge from the water. It was a dragon in the light of the moon. That's when the protagonist turned to his human form. He felt really good, especially when he got rid of the stress. A lot had been building up lately. Favre couldn't realize that it was for the sake of getting rid of stress that he'd arranged all this. Surprisingly, Damon was still alive. He wanted to reach for the seahorn, but Royce took him. Looks like this man just can't seem to give up. But worry not, for he will take care of this treasure. However, he was not good at blowing his horn. It was funny about him playing Bahoon so well, but he couldn't handle it. Royce started to argue that it wasn't about that at all. The thing is, the horn itself is already broken. The protagonist asked if it would be okay if they stuck the horn together, but it seems to have finally broken down. Right before Royce's eyes, his chance for a quick return home was ruined. Suddenly, a sea monster appeared there. Looks like they're in trouble. He wanted to kill Favre and Royce, so they started running. Favre asked what was wrong with him. Royce explained that he had lost control because of a broken horn. When the two turned around, they saw that the sea monster was attracted by the light from the festival. We can't let it get there. It's very crowded right now. He told the fairy to bring the twins. Meanwhile, Royce and Favre will try to hold him off. After which they rushed to the attack. A woman asked her lover if this alley was dangerous at night. But what do you mean, dangerous? It's right next to her. He couldn't believe she was actually scared. Just then the man heard a sound, and there was already a sea monster. People didn't realize what it was at all. They should run away from here immediately. The woman saw that he couldn't get up on his own due to fear, so she took matters into her own hands and tried to get away from it. A hammer flew into his mouth. Favre tried to draw that serpent on himself. Of course, he immediately took notice and threw himself at the man. He asked the gentleman to get started as soon as possible. Royce engaged the attribute of space, spatial shield. No matter how hard the sea monster tried, it couldn't get through the portal. Royce has successfully imprisoned the monster. Now it must be calmed down. The guy engaged the attribute of reason. However, he wouldn't budge. Royce wasn't doing well. The spatial shield doesn't hold up, and he can't use 2 attributes at the same time. It's too heavy. After that, Baron Therius and his men came running in. He had no idea what it was or where the monster had come from. Favre told him that Damon had brought it in. Apparently, the man had tried to create chaos during the festival. Therius immediately wanted to know where the damn bastard was now. It seems he took advantage of the situation to escape. What was important now was to return the monster back to where it came from. Royce was getting angry, because he didn't realize how much longer they were going to keep cooing there. Let them try to do something. Favre beckoned his friend to follow him. The twins came running over to him. Royce said to distract the monster while Favre made preparations. They'll take the case. Afterward, the twins attacked the sea monster. That'll hold the beast off for a while. Favre informed the gentleman that everything was ready. The spatial shield is gone. The sea monster was thinking of running away, but they managed to grab him with a rope. Now there was nothing he could do. The Baron shouted to his men not to let go and to hold on. Royce then used the control method, spatial clamping. Now the monster couldn't move. Royce approached him and said that the monster had suffered a lot. He would help him get home. The main character used the attribute of reason, emotionalization. The sea monster's eyes stopped being red. He seemed to come to his senses. Now it was a harmless monster. Royce noticed the Baron walking toward them. He wanted to finish this monster off, but the protagonist stopped him with the attribute of time. Therius didn't understand at all why the guy did that. But there was no need to. It wasn't the monster's fault, since Damon was controlling him. The twins immediately pounced on the monster. However, the Baron thought it would be dangerous to leave it just like that. Royce will handle everything, so the Baron can take it easy. After which, they approached the pier. Royce told the monster to go back to where he was brought from, and never go near towns where people live. Afterward, the children said goodbye to the sea monster. Now it was time for them to get ready too. The twins asked what they should get ready for. They've done what they had to do, so it's time to go. Meanwhile, Damon was thinking about how he wasn't going to give up that easily. He will take revenge on anyone who dares to stand in his way, even if it means burning the whole city to the ground. Suddenly, he was lifted up by a sea monster. The monster grabbed him by his clothes. It then tossed the man into the air and prepared to eat him. One could only hear the screams for the monster not to do so, but it was too late. After which, the beast swam away, and all that was left in the water was Damon's jacket. Lucia came down from the stage. There were 4 more performers left before it was their turn. She didn't understand where Royce had gone. She hadn't seen him in a long time. Afterward, Moana came running to her, who didn't expect anything else from her. Lucia's a great girl. She was sure Mom and Dad would be proud of her. Afterward, Carrie and his entourage approached them. Moana asked the blonde man what he was doing here. Just before he could explain anything, the girl had already noticed the flowers behind him. She motioned Carrie over to Lucia, talking about how this kid had something important for her. It's customary to give flowers at events like this, so let her be brave. Carrie congratulated her on her successful return to the stage, to what he called her, his lady, but he immediately changed his address to Siren Lucia. She accepted the flowers and thanked Carrie for them. Royce noticed that everyone was doing well. He was sure they would all be happy without him. A few days later, the ship will be departing shortly. All passengers must board. Moana asked them not to leave. Do they have to leave this place? Let them stay and live with them. Then Favre mentioned that he was leaving too. But Moana didn't care, for he had been drunk all this time. Favre began to explain that these were business banquets. He found something to justify his behavior. Lucia said that they would come again. But Royce didn't even know what to say to that. Moana also mentioned that they should come. If they can make it, they'll be sure to stop by this place. Lucia hugged the boy. The girl asked that they try to come. There were tears in her eyes. Royce promised that they would honor that request. Afterward, he noticed Carrie's gaze on himself. At last, he came. Lucia's arms were so gentle as she hugged him. The little guy was pissing Carrie off as usual, after which he held out a siren's tear. Carrie is keeping his promises. Royce did help Lucia get back up on stage. The protagonist inquired about the ring. Carrie told him that if he suddenly returned to the city, let him use the ring. His family's crest is engraved on the ring, so Royce can count on their help. So the ring is some kind of pass to the city. And Carrie's not such an asshole. Blondie's hoping he's coming for a visit, not forever. Royce also advised Carrie not to do anything stupid and to stick to his advice. The blonde man told him to shut up and stay out of his business. But he also remembered to thank the protagonist for everything. His subordinates mentioned that more effort should be put into saying thank you. Royce called him a douchebag. Still, this kid's pretty good. Terius came there as well. Favre asked how the repairs were progressing. The damage is minor, and thankfully there were no casualties. They were very lucky this time. He also mentioned that that boy wasn't easy at all. The way this guy defeated the monster was the ultimate in most people's capabilities. Favre tried to pretend he didn't know what his old friend was talking about. Royce is his common nephew, after all. He really is his distant relative. Now he would never think anything bad of his nephew. And Favre can be sure of that. Favre owes Terius a debt of gratitude. After which they boarded the ship. Everyone gathered wished them a good journey. Lucia asked that they be sure to visit them. The twins as well as Royce wished Lucia and Moana good luck. They had a great time at their place. Connie asked Royce where they were going now. It was surprising that they were only asking about it now. They are headed for the port city of Dormant, which is on the Fall continent. Afterwards, they will cross the continent by land. Royce asked Favre how long it would take to get to Dormant, but the man said nothing. The protagonists wondered what he was doing there and why he wasn't answering. As it turned out, Favre wasn't feeling well at all. Looks like he's seasick. Favre thought he was going to die. After that, he started throwing up. That asshole was so weak. Favre is nothing but trouble. Royce used the attribute of reason, putting Favre to sleep. He would sleep for a few hours, and after he woke up, he would feel much better. The protagonist suggested that the twins check the room, and they agreed. Meanwhile, someone approached Favre. This boogeyman should be at least level 3, and the boy just put him to sleep like that. He turned his attention to the children. Still, This trip promises to be quite interesting.